Chapter 61. The hunting group waited at the entrance of the cave until the next afternoon. They were supposed to leave at noon, but Mai and Lang Jie proposed to wait a little longer, so they continued to wait at the entrance. In fact, by this time, Lang Jie and the others had already given up hope, but they were still unwilling to give up. "Let's go. If we don't leave now, we'll be late." A warrior at the same age as Mai looked at the sky and said. They did not bring much food, for they had stored all the food they got from the first location. They only brought a small amount of food when they were on their way to the second location. By now, some of the warriors' beast skin bags were already empty. According to the rules of the hunting group, no one would leave when they were waiting for their companions. Even if the food was gone, they could not leave to hunt. This was another kind of mourning ceremony, to remember their companions. Even if they did not see their companions alive or dead, rationally speaking, everyone knew that the lost ones would never come back. Once they left the cave, it meant that they had given up waiting. The mourning was over, and the hunting began. The nature of the ceremony was different. Unless they returned from hunting, they would not return to the cave. For some people in the hunting group, it was enough for them to wait until now. Xiao Xian was not a big shot, nor did he have any status in the tribe. They did not need to spend a few days mourning for him. They had to start hunting as soon as possible. Mai looked at the setting sun and asked everyone to get ready to go. Before they left, everyone lowered their heads slightly and touched the middle of their eyebrows with one hand. Every time a member of the hunting group left, the other members would hold a simple mourning ceremony like this. "Let's go." After the mourning, Mai led the others out of the cave and prepared to go to another cave on the mountainside. That was their second location. Xiao Xian carried the ancestor on his back and the stone tool in his hand, and walked step by step towards the entrance of the cave. After being in the dark for so long, Xiao Xian did not feel uncomfortable when he saw the light again. He had already heard the chirping of birds and insects outside the cave, and his mood rose sharply. The entrance of the cave was relatively narrow, much narrower than the cave entrance of the mountainside. Perhaps a long time ago, this cave entrance was as big as the other caves, but now, more than half of the cave entrance was blocked by some big rocks that fell from the mountain. Moreover, the cave entrance was also blocked by vines due to the passage of time. The surface of this mountain was the same as other mountains. There was nothing special about it. There were plants and streams. Only the depths of the mountain were different from other mountains. Therefore, the surface of the mountain was the same as the other mountains. There were all kinds of flowers, plants, and insects. The names of all the hunting group leaders carved on the wall of the entrance of the cave were still there and would not disappear. At the entrance of the cave, Xiao Xian listened carefully and observed the outside through the gaps between the vines. He didn't find any dangerous creatures, so he carefully parted the vines and walked out. When he walked, he had to be careful not to let the person on his back hit the rocks. The person was already in such a state. He didn't know if the person would crack if they hit the rocks. Sensing Yang Guang's weak aura, Xiao Xian felt as if he had been reborn. If it weren't for the fact that the environment didn't allow him to do so, he would have roared to vent his anger. He was used to seeing skeletons, so he didn't feel scared. But now, when he turned around and saw the 4 dried corpses, Xiao Xian forced himself to calm down and tried to hypnotize himself. It's okay. These are the ancestors of the tribe. Even if they are shriveled, withered, and gray, they are still extraordinary. He didn't leave the 4 people on his back immediately. The treasure was still there. Xiao Xian planned to ask for the ancestors' protection before he met up with the hunting group. Xiao Xian didn't know where he was, but when he looked up at the mountain and saw the figures flying in the sky, he felt that he should still be on the same mountain. Moreover, he had already arrived at the other side of the mountain, and was still at the foot of the mountain. He couldn't just wander around like this. He didn't know this place well, and he couldn't fight against those ferocious beasts. He also had to be careful not to be caught by those big birds in the sky. He could only try to contact the hunting group first. Xiao Xian looked down and found that there was a layer of gray stone powder on his animal skin clothes and pants, as well as on his hands. He rubbed his hands together to get rid of the stone powder. He was going to pick up some leaves from the vines nearby to wipe his hands, but he gave up after thinking about it. Xiao Xian didn't know if the vines were poisonous to people. After wiping his hands, Xiao Xian bent his fingers and put them into his mouth, and blew a whistle with a specific rhythm. It was impossible to shout directly here, because it would attract some creatures. Therefore, Xiao Xian used the old method used by the hunting group. While blowing, Xiao Xian thought about making a deer whistle for hunting in the future. The hunting group, who were walking to the second location, paused, especially Chiao Mai, his wife, and the several intermediate totem warriors. Their hearing was better than that of the junior totem warriors, so they could clearly hear the sound that the junior totem warriors could only hear vaguely. Mike, that's... Chiao Mai pulled Mike excitedly. Mai signaled her to calm down, and listened carefully. The sound was a little far away, but she could still recognize that it was the secret signal of the hunting team. And it seemed that Xiao Xian was the only one in the team who could blow this kind of whistle. However, they had just left the cave, and the direction of the whistle was not at the cave entrance, but at the foot of the mountain. You guys wait here, Mai said as he ran down the mountain. With a few jumps, his figure disappeared into the bushes. Is it really Xian? Lang Jie said in surprise. Although he couldn't hear it clearly, he had heard the same sound before he found the two kids during the Thorn-Black Wind incident. Impossible. Even our ancestors couldn't come out. How could Xian do it? A warrior said. It wasn't that he didn't want Xiao Xian to come back, but he didn't believe in Xiao Xian's ability, because he worshipped his ancestors. But that sound was the same as the one we heard when we found him last time, Ung said. Thinking that Xiao Xian was still alive, Lang Jie couldn't help but ask. Not only Lang Jie, but also the others, who were eager to know the answer. Let's go and have a look. Yeah, let's go and have a look. As long as we don't go out of the mountain, we won't encounter any big ferocious beasts. We can go to the cave later. I want to go too. Generally speaking, people in the hunting group always followed the rules and listened to the leader's words. If the leader asked them to wait, they would do it. But the situation was different now. Since the hunting route was established, almost no one had been able to come out of it after going missing. Even the ancestors couldn't do it. After a discussion, several intermediate totem warriors decided to go and have a look as well. So after Mike ran there, the others in the hunting group followed him. Mike followed the voice and saw a grayish-white person standing there. At first, Mike didn't pay attention to what Xiao Xian was carrying on his back, nor did he look carefully at the stone tools Xiao Xian put at his feet. Now, Mike was shocked. Even though Xiao Xian was covered with a layer of gray stone powder, he was still a kid. He knew who he was at first glance. Xian, you're really okay. The others in the hunting group who followed him also arrived, and they recognized Xiao Xian. Lang Jie quickly approached Xiao Xian, ready to give him a warrior's hug to celebrate Xiao Xian's narrow escape. But when he saw what Xiao Xian was carrying on his back, he stammered, Xian, what's that on your back? All eyes were fixed on Xiao Xian's back. This, Xiao Xian turned around so that the others could have a better look at the person on his back. He pointed and said, it's the ancestor. But Xiao Xian still underestimated the weight of the word ancestor in the hearts of the people in the tribe. As soon as the word ancestor was mentioned, Xiao Xian found that the others in the hunting group seemed to be frozen. They stood there blankly, but their eyes turned red, and their breaths were rapid and heavy. Their facial muscles were twitching, and they looked a little twisted. Their bodies even began to tremble. The people who were normal a moment ago were now all acting strange. Wait, don't get too excited. Let's talk slowly. Chapter 62. Don't get too excited? How could that be possible? Take it slow? What should he say? He couldn't say it. He was an ancestor. He was an ancestor. No one doubted Xiao Xian's words. They all knew that only people from the Yanjiao tribe lived here. Moreover, those who were lost in the cave were either elders or even older ancestors. The possibility of it being an ancestor was higher. When they thought that Xiao Xian was carrying an ancestor on his back, they felt a strong emotion in their hearts. They believed in totems and worshipped their ancestors. For them, totems were needless to say, and the word ancestor also carried the holy light. The hunting team, who had been trembling all over, finally moved. At first, they only took small steps to get closer to Xiao Xian. They were usually able to jump easily during hunting, but now, even a small step seemed to take all their strength. Gradually, their steps became faster and faster, but they were still taking small steps, as if they would disturb their ancestors if they took too big a step. They were all very careful. Looking at more than 30 hunting warriors coming towards him, Xiao Xian suddenly wanted to turn around and run away. He couldn't help it. The expressions on these people's faces were too crazy, which made Xiao Xian's heart beat like a drum. When they were only 3 steps away from Xiao Xian, Mai, who was walking in the front, took the lead and knelt down on one knee with the rest of the hunting team. They made a heavy bow to worship their ancestors. Although they only knelt down on one knee, which was not as good as kneeling down to worship totems, Xiao Xian felt pain when he heard the sound of their knees hitting the ground. What's more, except for Mao, these people were much older than him, and their seniority in the tribe was much higher than his. But they all knelt down in front of him. Xiao Xian. What the hell? Would this shorten my lifespan? Xiao Xian only felt that a group of Caesar were howling in his heart. Thinking of this, Xiao Xian couldn't help but move a little to the side. Don't move! Mai and the others shouted at the same time, stopping Xiao Xian in his tracks. Xiao Xian, who had just taken a step forward, froze. Seeing everyone like this, Xiao Xian really didn't know what to do. He stood there stiffly for a while, only feeling that the 4 ancestors on his back were as heavy as 10,000 pounds, making him sweat profusely. After everyone in the hunting group knelt down, Xiao Xian watched them carefully and respectfully untie the 4 ancestors from Xiao Xian's back. Seeing that Xiao Xian had tied up the 4 ancestors, he felt that this was too disrespectful to the ancestors. When he looked again, he saw that they were tied up with the antennae of the abominable insects in the cave. Xiao Xian, who was resting next to them, was glanced at over and over again by the condemning eyes of the crowd. However, he was thick-skinned and pretended that he didn't know anything. He wasn't stupid enough to explain to these fanatical people, especially when they were in an extreme mood. It was impossible to reason with them. However, even if they couldn't be reasoned with, Xiao Xian didn't want to continue being glanced at like this. So, he diverted the crowd's attention and told them about what had happened in the cave. Previously, the crowd was indeed curious about how Xiao Xian got out of the cave, but all their attention was on the ancestors, so they didn't have time to care about anything else. Now that they heard Xiao Xian's story, they all pricked up their ears. Of course, Xiao Xian wouldn't reveal his trump card. He simply said that after he killed the insect, he encountered the king's stoneworm. However, he didn't see it with his own eyes, but only felt the changes in the surroundings. Then, he thought about the shaman's guidance and the totem's guidance, and found the ancestors. Although he didn't mention that he had seen the light shield, he wanted to let the others know that it would be best to put the 3 mummies, or rather, the 3 ancestors together with the man with the mysterious bone ornament. That was why he told them about his speculation. I think that the bone ornament carried by the ancestor has a special power that can protect the ancestors. Xiao Xian told them about his speculation. The crowd thought about it and agreed. They also felt comfortable when they were close to the ancestor. He was indeed an ancestor. Even though the mysterious bone ornament was indeed a treasure, no one in the hunting group had the intention to take it for themselves. That was the advantage of being fanatical. They wouldn't forget their ancestors and the rules of the tribe. Thus, everyone carefully invited the 4 ancestors who had just been separated back together. When they heard Xiao Xian's description of how he found the 4 ancestors, the crowd burst into tears. They felt as if they were watching that bleak scene from the side. They felt that the ancestors were still thinking about the tribe even before they died. In order to open up a hunting route, they were trapped in the cave for hundreds of years and couldn't return. Everyone was really worried about the ancestors. They were so sad that their snot and tears were running down their cheeks. Especially the young ones like Lang Jie. They wanted to cry out loud. Why didn't he feel that the people in the tribe were so emotional before? Seeing this scene, Xiao Xian tried his best to keep the expression on his face, so that his face wouldn't twitch. In the past, he only knew that people in the tribe were obsessed with hero worship and chief worship. But now, he knew that compared with the ancestors, the former 2 were nothing. These 4 ancestors had been dead for God knows how many years, but they had always maintained the posture of kneeling. Therefore, when the hunting group carried the ancestors, they were careful not to face the ancestors, and tried to make the ancestors kneel in the direction of the tribe. There were only 4 dried corpses and 30 warriors. Normally, they would fight ferociously against ferocious beasts and could knock over a bear with a single punch. But now, they were so busy that they were sweating profusely. Even the slightest movement had to be considered over and over again. They were extremely cautious. It was really taxing on their mind and body. Yet, they still looked like they were enjoying it. As Xiao Xian expected, although the 4 ancestors had dried up and hardened, and their original faces could not be seen clearly, to be honest, Xiao Xian found them to be quite horrifying. He even had to mentally prepare himself several times to carry them out. However, it was exactly this kind of appearance that was shining with holy light in the hearts of everyone in the hunting group. When they stood up, they could not wait to kneel down and worship them again. Finally, before the evening, the hunting group carried the ancestors to the cave in the second location. Originally, it would only take them a short while to walk from the foot of the mountain to the second location, but to invite the 4 ancestors to the second location, it took them nearly 2 hours to walk. After they carried the ancestors back to the cave and arranged them properly, the hunting group knelt down again. Even in their dreams, they called out ancestors. Since such a thing had happened, the hunting group's desire had faded. They really wanted to bring the ancestors back now, and let the people who had been away from home for hundreds of years return to the tribe. The ancestors must have been waiting for this day. But the hunting rules were there, and no one said that they had to bring forward the hunting schedule when they found the ancestors. The rules were passed down by the ancestors, and they did not dare to disobey. According to the hunting plan, they had to hunt outside for another 10 days or so before they could go back. Then they would meet up with the rest of the hunting group and go back to the tribe together. Of course, the big rules could not be changed, but the small rules could be changed freely. Mai could make the decision. Originally, the hunting range would be expanded, and the hunting area would be further away. Sometimes, they would stay outside for a few days when they were hunting in the second location. But now, he asked them to hunt near the second location, and some people had to stay behind to guard the cave every day. With the precedent of the thorn-black wind, the hunting group was worried that other ferocious beasts would break in and destroy the ancestors' remains. Even though large ferocious beasts were rarely seen in this mountain, they still had to guard against the smaller ones and other accidents. Everyone agreed with Mai, and they took turns to guard the cave every day. Days went by. The hunting life was thrilling. Xueqi, under the guidance of the seniors in the hunting group, had hunted a lot of good prey, enough for him to eat for 20 or 30 days. 5 days before the gathering day, Mai made the decision and asked everyone to go back. With the ancestors, they had to be more careful and spend more time. So, in order to meet up with the other hunting groups in time, they had to bring forward the hunting schedule. This time, when they went through the cave, it was very smooth, and no one was left behind. The people in the hunting group chopped the best wood, and made a simple sedan chair in Xueqi's eyes. They used it to bring the ancestors home. They knew that when they returned to the tribe, their hunting group would have the least prey, but they did not care. There were still 3 thorn-black winds in the first location. Besides, the most important thing was that they had found the 4 ancestors, and they felt very proud. Guarding the ancestors and bringing them back to the tribe might be the greatest honor in their lives. Death, but none. Regret. Plus equals. Thank you for all the tips and gifts. Chapter 63. Early in the morning, the tribe woke up from the quietness as usual, and gradually recovered. It looked peaceful. Gu yawned and walked out of the door. He planned to go to the riverside to check on those kids who were fishing. Gu stretched himself as he walked. Suddenly, he heard some noise, so he looked over there. It was the noise from the people who were guarding the path of glory. It was about time for the hunting team to come back. Recently, another hunting team in the tribe was preparing. Now, Gu followed their line of sight. On the path of glory, 2 soldiers were carrying a person and running up the mountain. It seemed that the person being carried had already lost consciousness. Moreover, the 2 soldiers were running very fast. Could it be that the injury was very serious? So serious that he might die immediately? The person being carried was an adult warrior, not a kid. This made Gu feel a little relieved. Because the day of the hunting team's return was getting closer and closer, old Ku was anxious every day. He had not slept well for many days. Now, even though old Ku still had a straight face, the others could see that old Ku was in a very bad mental state. Tut, is it necessary? Gu sneered. Since someone had already sent back the severely injured hunting team members, the hunting team would probably come back this afternoon or tomorrow. He wanted to go to old Ku and tell him about this. But after thinking about it, Gu decided to wait for a while, to see if there were any more injured warriors or other abnormal movements. Many people had the same idea as Gu. Some people who had nothing to do decided to wait here for the whole day. Not long after, Gu and the other people near the foot of the mountain heard a commotion. Moreover, the sound came from the mountain. Everyone looked up and saw a few people running down the mountain on the path of glory. What made their jaws drop was that one of them was a shaman. In the past, when the hunting team returned, the shaman would wait at the top of the path of glory to welcome the returning warriors. But now, the shaman was running down the mountain in a hurry, protected by 2 warriors. They were afraid that the shaman would fall down. From the looks of it, if it weren't for his old age and the inconvenience of his legs, the shaman would probably have run. When Shamaness passed by them on the path of glory, Gur and the others could clearly see the expression on her face. Shamaness, who had always been calm, was actually anxious. She looked as if she was about to cry. What in the world happened? This was what everyone who saw this scene from the top to the bottom of the mountain thought. No matter what it was, it must be something big. Otherwise, the shaman wouldn't be like this. Thinking that something big might have happened, everyone felt uneasy. Gu hurried over to Old Ku. Old Ku, who was suffering from severe insomnia, had dark circles under his eyes. For the past few days, he had been absent-mindedly grinding stone tools in his room early in the morning. In fact, he knew that he couldn't make any satisfactory stoneware in this state, but he just wanted to find something to do. Otherwise, he might not be able to resist going to the path of glory to guard it, or go to the outskirts of the tribe to wait. He was anxious. Caesar was lying on the side listlessly. The fur on his body was dull. He was lying on his side, with a bone in his mouth. He was bored and would grind his teeth on the bone. He looked lazy. Suddenly, Caesar's ears twitched. He got up and looked at the window. Old Ku. Ji's voice came from outside the window. His voice sounded very anxious. Old Ku, who was grinding the stone tool, was startled. He exerted force in his hand and broke the thin stone tool. The next moment, Gu jumped in through the window. He knew that Old Ku wasn't in the mood to install traps on the window. Gu was now more daring, unlike before when he had to be very careful. What's wrong? Old Ku rarely asked first. I don't know, but something must have happened. Gu told Old Ku what he had just seen. Even with his rich hunting experience, Old Ku couldn't figure out the meaning of the shaman's behavior. He stopped grinding the stone tool and walked out with his crutch. Caesar didn't stay in the room either. Maybe he knew that the hunting team was coming back, so he followed Old Ku out. When Old Ku and Gu arrived at the Path of Glory, the people near the mountain foot area had already gathered there. It was said that many people were still walking to the periphery of the tribe, up and down the mountain. The shaman's behavior just now made everyone feel very uneasy, but they couldn't find out the reason. Soon, some people came back. The shaman was still walking in the front. The difference was that the shaman only looked anxious before, but now he was crying in public. Walking to the intersection of the Path of Glory at the foot of the mountain, the shaman stood there, looking in the direction where the hunting team came back. And the people who went to the periphery of the tribe to inquire about the situation were just like the shaman. They were so excited that their eyes turned red. When they returned to the crowd, they simply told them what happened in a low voice. What? Ancestor! A person with poor self-control and a loud voice exclaimed. As soon as he finished speaking, he was beaten to the ground by the people next to him. Keep your voice down. Now that they knew the reason why the shaman was so excited, the people's uneasiness faded away and was replaced by a rapidly rising excitement. Just like Mai and the others, the people in the tribe were so excited that they were stunned. They didn't come back to their senses until they heard that the hunting team had arrived. Although there were only about 200 people in the long hunting team, with the addition of the prey, it looked particularly magnificent. However, this time, the people in the tribe didn't pay attention to the prey, but stared at the wooden sedan in the front. The top of the wooden sedan had been removed when they returned to the tribe. Now everyone could clearly see the 4 figures kneeling on the sedan. It was reasonable to say that these 4 ancestors were found by Xiao, so he should be the first one to carry the ancestors from the Path of Glory to the sacrificial ground. Unfortunately, Xiao was only a child, and it was natural for tall and strong warriors to carry the ancestors. Relatively speaking, Xiao was really too short. The people in the hunting team all felt sorry for Xiao, but in fact, Xiao didn't think so. Carrying the sedan not only required lifting, but also paying attention to the direction. No matter where they went, they had to make sure that the 4 ancestors were kneeling in the direction of the tribe. Therefore, along the way, the people who carried the sedan sometimes walked straight, sometimes at a certain angle, and sometimes in a different direction. Welcome back, ancestors. The shaman raised his arms and shouted, then knelt down in the ritual of the ancestors. The other people in the tribe also knelt down in excitement. Xueqi struggled to drag the prey, and then heard the sound of knees knocking on the ground, which made his teeth ache. After kneeling down, the shaman stood up and guarded beside the wooden sedan. He was the shaman of the tribe, so of course he had to guard the ancestors. The shaman followed the wooden sedan up the mountain, but the others still knelt down. When the wooden sedan passed, they slightly raised their heads and looked at the hunting team walking behind the sedan. The hunting team was about 10 meters away from the wooden sedan. As usual, the hunting team members brought back their prey to show off their hunting results. Compared to the past, Mai's hunting team had much less prey, but they had found their ancestors. In the hearts of the people in the tribe, they were the best hunters in the hunting team this time. Xueqi had a lot of prey. He carried them on his shoulders, with a rope in his hand, and the other end of the rope was tied to the thorn-black wind. Xueqi had to work hard by himself, but fortunately, he had the help of Mao and other warriors in the hunting team. "Wow, that is..." someone at the foot of the Path of Glory exclaimed. Those ferocious black thorns, those hard scales that looked like armor, even though they had lost their vitality, they still looked like the god of death. Those were thorn-black winds. And there were 3 of them. Oh my god, that was unbelievable. What was even more unbelievable was that there were 2 kids dragging the thorn-black wind in the front. However, with the matter of the ancestor in front of them, the shock brought about by this was not that strong. They were only told that it was Mai's hunting team that found their ancestors, but they did not know the details. Mao was a little embarrassed. After all, he did not contribute much in the hunting of the thorn-black wind. Before the hunt started, he wanted to outdo Xueqi, but he did not expect that he could not help much at the critical moment. Xueqi saw old Ku and Gus standing at the periphery of the crowd, as well as Caesar, who was wagging his tail happily. He curled up the corner of his mouth and smiled, while thinking about how to tell old Ku about the teeth knife when he went back. Chapter 64. After walking through the Path of Glory, the hunting team put the game aside first. They still had a ceremony to complete, and then the hunt would be over. The shaman asked his men to put the wooden palanquin in the fire pit. Since there was only a small flame in the center of the fire pit, there was still a lot of space. The 4 warriors who carried the palanquin into the fire pit felt their legs go soft, not because of fear or nervousness, but because they were too excited. In their eyes, this was a great honor, and they could tell their children about it in the future. After carefully putting the palanquin in the fire pit, the 4 warriors left, and the shaman went in to kneel down. Xueqi did not know the identities of those ancestors, but judging from the shaman's expression, he could guess that the most important one among the 4 was the one with the bone ornament. The shaman was extra careful when kneeling down. After the ceremony, the shaman left the fire pit, for he still had to hold the knife-washing ceremony for the warriors. The shaman asked his men to carry out a long stone trough. There was gray-white water in the stone trough, but it smelled like the fresh smell of the forest plants. No one knew how the water was made. The leaders of each hunting group would lead their men to wash their knives. According to the knife-cleansing ceremony, after the hunt, one had to dispel the evil spirit on the knife and take away the bloody chi that had been stained in the forest. At the same time, it would allow those who were still immersed in hunting and killing to calm down the murderous intent in their hearts. Although it was said to wash the knives, in fact, it was not only the knives that needed to be washed, but also the stone spears, axes, and other tools that had been brought back. The first to go were the team leaders and those in the advance group, and then the hunting groups. The stoneware that Xueqi brought with him when he found his ancestors had already been handed over to the hunting team when they gathered. Although the stoneware was made of excellent quality, Xueqi could not hide it and use it for himself. The tribe was only so big, and there were so many people watching. It was impossible for him to take it for himself, so he might as well hand it over. The shamaness and the chief would naturally reward him according to his merits, and there would be many good stones. Hunting down the thorn-black wind and finding the ancestor, Xueqi could be said to be the biggest hero of this hunting group. Because of this, when Xueqi stepped forward to wash the knife, the shaman specially arranged a position for Xueqi to wash the knife. Generally speaking, only the best warriors in the hunting group could wash their knives in the middle of the stone trough, which was right in front of the shaman. Most of the time, the leader of the hunting group would stand there, but this time it was Xueqi. Mai and the others had no objection. Looking at Xueqi in front of him, the shaman's expression was especially kind. Xueqi's performance this time was too eye-catching, and the ancestors' power was too great. Therefore, when Xueqi walked out, the others in the hunting group all looked at him. When they were gathering in the forest, they didn't have the time and energy to pay attention to Xueqi. Now that they were back, they had to take a good look at him. This included the team leader, the leader, and the others. When everyone in the hunting group walked to the stone trough, the shaman raised his hand and signaled the warriors to start washing the knives. Xueqi had just watched the previous group wash their knives, so he knew what to do. He took out the spearhead and stone knife, and put them into the stone trough one by one with both hands. After putting them all in, Xueqi thought for a while, and remembered that there was one more knife. Xueqi took out the tooth knife given by old Ku, and at the same time, took out the broken tip. Among the warriors who had been staring at Xueqi, many recognized the tooth knife. Even if they didn't know who it belonged to, they knew the material it was made of. Several elite warriors in the tribe also had knives made of the same material, and they were all inherited from their elders. How could such a good tooth knife be broken like this? The user was just a kid. How could he have such great strength? Oh my God! How on earth did he use it? Some warriors looked at the broken tip in Xueqi's hand, and their eyes almost popped out. Not only the warriors, but the shaman's kind face also froze. He remembered the scene where this kid stood in the team and lip-synced before the hunt. She really knew how to toss things around. Xueqi noticed the eyes around him, but he didn't care. He put the knife into the stone trough with both hands, and let it soak in the gray liquid. There was the red blood of the thorn-black wind on the knife, and the brown liquid from the insect in the cave. During the hunt, Xueqi wiped it with water, but he couldn't completely wipe it clean. But when the shaman finished the spell and asked them to take out the knife, he found that all the traces on it were gone, and the stone trough was still as clean as before the hunt. After the knife-washing ceremony, everyone only felt that their bodies were lighter, and their minds were also refreshed. In order to take care of Xueqi's small body and so many praise, the shaman asked Xueqi to go back first, and he would send someone to deliver the praise to him later. Xueqi didn't need to carry the praise himself, so he didn't need to worry that someone would steal his praise. After Xueqi left, Xueqi poked the team leader carefully. He glanced at Xueqi's figure, and then turned back to look at the team leader. The team leader nodded his head slightly with a serious face. Xueqi, who got the permission, suddenly smiled. He didn't care about the praise anymore, and asked Tuo to help him drag the praise back. He then ran in the direction where Xueqi had left. The team leader was thinking, and he looked up as if he had noticed something. He met the eyes of the leader's father, and then he smiled flatteringly, without the serious look of a leader at all. The leader frowned, wondering what his son was up to. He glanced at Mao, who was standing next to him, and wondered if it had something to do with Mao. He knew that Mao and Xueqi probably had some conflicts, but that was a healthy internal competition. According to the rules, the elders couldn't interfere. What's more, Xueqi had made a great contribution to the tribe this time, so he couldn't be bullied. When he was about to go and scold him, the shaman asked him for something about the ancestors. Since it was about the ancestors, the leader couldn't delay. Before he left, he stared at his son, warning him not to have any bad ideas, and then he left with the shaman. The team leader didn't care about his father's stare, and kept thinking. On the other side, Xueqi went down the mountain empty-handed. He didn't walk on the path of glory, nor did he pass through crowded places. He chose a place with fewer people to go down the mountain. At this time, all the families were busy welcoming the warriors back home and helping to deal with the prey. Xueqi didn't see many people loitering in the places he passed by. While he was thinking about how to explain to old Ku about the knife, Xueqi paused his steps, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. He didn't look at the fist coming at him from behind, but tilted his neck, exerted force on his feet, and nimbly dodged the attack. However, the attacker didn't stop after the first attack. The shadow of the fist came one after another, and the speed was no slower than Xueqi's. Almost as soon as Xueqi dodged, the attacker came at him again. Xueqi couldn't avoid the attack. He held the opponent's fist with his arms, and his body was forced to step back by the force. Every time he stepped back, the stones under his feet would shatter, like thunder before a rainstorm, making a rumbling sound. However, the attacker didn't stop. Every time Xueqi stepped back, he would take a step forward, and with every step, he would throw a punch. The shadow of the fist flew everywhere, leaving no time for Xueqi to dodge. The dust that had just floated up was blown away by the wind generated by the fist. The attacker was much taller than Xiao Xian, and more powerful than Xiao Xian. Coupled with the dense shadow of the fist, Xiao Xian was almost suppressed. Xiao Xian only felt the blood in his chest churning, and finally, there was the sound of bones breaking in his arm. Following this sound, Xiao Xian's whole body was directly sent flying. After landing on the ground, Xiao Xian took several steps back. It took him a lot of effort not to fall, and he swallowed the blood that almost came out of his mouth. This time, the attacker didn't attack again. Both sides calmed down, and the totem patterns on their bodies gradually disappeared. After standing firm, Xiao Xian gasped for breath. He didn't care about the broken bones in his arm. Anyway, this degree of injury was nothing. He just stared at the person in front of him. Xueqi. Although Xueqi didn't have any killing intent, and had just finished the sword cleansing ceremony, because of the long-term hunting, his every move revealed a murderous aura. Good. Xueqi was very satisfied to see that Xiao Xian could still stand firm after taking so many blows, and didn't show any pain. He even seemed to not care about the broken bones in his arm. However, just after he said good, Xueqi was kicked away. The one who kicked Xueqi was Tuo, who was asked by the team leader to come and check the situation. However, when he arrived, he saw Xueqi break the child's arm. Damn you, Xueqi! The team leader asked you to come and test him, and this is how you test him? He is an adult warrior, and his strength is much higher than the child's. Isn't it pure bullying? Does it prove that you are capable? Aren't you ashamed? If the shaman and the chief know, they will kill us. Tuo was so angry that he stepped on Xueqi, who was about to get up, to the ground again. You don't know how to control your strength. After stepping on Xueqi, Tuo turned around with a smile, trying to show his kindness. Actually, he doesn't mean any harm. Xiao Xian looked at his arm that made a cracking sound, then raised his eyes and looked at Tuo with an expressionless face. He meant, look, his arm is broken, and he doesn't mean any harm? Tuo scolded Xueqi thousands of times in his heart, but he still smiled apologetically. He took out a bag of herbs wrapped in leaves from his animal skin bag and handed it to Xiao Xian. This medicine is good. Take it for a few days and your arm will be fine. Xiao Xian still stared at Tuo expressionlessly. When the smile on Tuo's face became stiff, he looked down at his animal skin bag. Tuo immediately understood Xiao Xian's meaning. He secretly said that he was so careless. Xueqi had just broken the child's arm. How could he take the medicine bag? After putting the medicine bag into Xiao Xian's animal skin bag, Tuo once again smiled apologetically at Xiao Xian. He's just an immature person. We're on the same team. Please forgive him. Ha! He your sister. Xiao Xian continued to stare. Tuo was too embarrassed to face Xiao Xian's gaze, so he grabbed Xueqi's feet and dragged him away. Xiao Xian looked at the backs of the two men, wondering what they were trying to do. At the same time, this book will be on the Sanjiang recommendation list. Friends who use computers can go to the Sanjiang page and vote for this book. You can vote every day for a week. Chen Xi thanked him. Chapter 65. After Xiao Xian went down the mountain, he did not go back to his house directly. Instead, he went to Old Ke's house. Caesar was already lying in front of the door. When he saw Xiao Xian, he immediately stood up and rushed to Xiao Xian. He hummed like a dog and almost wagged his tail. Yo, Xian is back, Gu said to Xiao Xian. He was lying in front of the window. He opened the grass curtain and stuck his head out. Uncle Gu. Xiao Xian avoided Caesar with his injured arm and walked into the house. Inside the house, Old Ku was sitting on a stone stool. When he saw Xiao Xian coming in, he showed a rare smile. It's good that you're back. What happened to your arm? The injury on Xiao Xian's arm couldn't escape Old Ku's eyes. When the hunting team came back from the Path of Glory, Xiao Xian was still carrying things on his back. He was not injured at all. How come his arm was injured after the sword cleansing ceremony? Seeing this, Old Ku's rare smile turned gloomy again. Let me see, Gu did not notice it before. Hearing Old Ku's words, he went to take a closer look. It's okay. I'll be fine in a few days. Seeing that Old Ku wanted to get to the bottom of the matter, Xiao Xian told him about his encounter with Feng Wu and Tuo when he went down the mountain. Hearing this, Old Ku thought for a while and asked Xiao Xian to check his arm. Old Ku twitched his nose. The herbs that Tua gave you? Old Ku took out the bag of herbs from Xiao Xian's animal skin bag and carefully observed some of the herbs. These are all very good medicines, Old Ku said as he passed the medicine bag to Gu, who was craning his neck to take a look. Boil them. Gu didn't say anything. He took the medicine bag and sniffed it, but he couldn't smell anything. He had never used this kind of herb before. The smell of this medicine bag was completely different from the ones he usually used. Old Ku asked Xiao Xian about the hunt, and Xiao Xian briefly explained it to him. Although a lot was omitted, Old Ku and Gu still felt that it was very thrilling. They did not expect that Xiao Xian would encounter so many things on his first hunting trip. Their survival could only be attributed to the blessing of their ancestors. In that case, the earth armor teeth knife has also done a great job. Gu rubbed his hands and looked at Xiao Xian with a smile. His intention was for Xiao Xian to take out the knife and show it to him. This. Xiao Xian stuttered. What? The knife is missing. Ji's heart was in his mouth. He looked at the thing hanging on Xiao Xian's waist. It was indeed the earth armor teeth knife's leather case. No, it's not. It's just that. Xiao Xian took the knife out of the leather case embarrassedly. The washed earth armor teeth knife was cleaner than when Old Ku gave it to Xiao Xian. The obvious broken tip was also noticed immediately. Gu looked incredulous. His hands trembled as he took the knife. He was heartbroken. Xiao Xian raised his eyes and glanced at Old Ku. He found that Old Ku didn't care about the knife like Gu did. He didn't get angry either. Instead, he looked very happy. Old Ku took the knife from Gu and looked at the marks on the knife carefully. He smiled happily. Don't worry. We can polish it into a smaller knife. We can use it next time. After saying that, Old Ku put the knife on the shelf next to him. He decided not to take any other jobs these days, but to polish this knife. The knife was badly worn and chipped. But Old Ku was very happy, because these marks proved that Xiao Xian had a very successful hunt. He had fought a very strong, ferocious beast. On the contrary, if Xiao Xian had brought back a perfectly good knife with little wear, Old Ku would have been a little disappointed, although he wouldn't have said anything. Old Ku drove Gu, who was sad about the knife, away. When the medicine was ready, Old Ku asked Xiao Xian to drink the medicine first. After drinking the bowl of medicine, Xiao Xian suddenly felt a very comfortable warm current flowing through his body, especially his injured arm. The original pain was reduced by a lot, and Xiao Xian could even clearly feel that the broken bones in his arm were gradually recovering. Those are the herbs specially made by the shaman. Because some of them are very hard to find, they can only be distributed to a few people. It's impossible for everyone in the hunting team to get one. Old Ku said. Because of this, the people who got the medicine also cherished it very much. How could Tua give one to Xiao Xian so easily? Old Ku couldn't understand. Although Xiao Xian's arm was injured by Xueqi, to be honest, this kind of injury was not serious in the eyes of the people in the tribe. People with good physiques could recover in a few days without using herbs. Xian and Tua were not familiar with each other. If they were in the same hunting team, it would be reasonable to give him the medicine. But in the same hunting team? Old Ku shook his head. Xiao Xian had just awakened his power this year, and had only participated in one hunting mission. Strictly speaking, he was just a good new warrior, and it was impossible for him to be selected immediately. After all, in order to join the hunting team, he had to get the approval of the team leader and several powerful warriors. Old Ku couldn't figure it out, so he decided not to think about it for the time being. Although I lost a leg, I can avenge you. Just wait for Xueqi to make a fool of himself next time. No need, Xiao Xian smiled. I can avenge myself. Good. Then I won't interfere. Old Ku was even more satisfied. Xian, use your totem power. Soon, totem patterns appeared on Xiao Xian's face, as well as on his arm. Old Ku stared at the totem patterns on Xiao Xian's arm, his eyes wide open. Crack. In Old Ku's hand, the crutch he had been using for almost a year was broken. On the other side, the team leader, who had just returned to the hunting team, had just finished his work on the mountaintop. Tua and Xueqi were already waiting for him in the house. How was the test? The team leader asked Ta. Before Xueqi said anything, Tua told him that Xueqi had broken Xiao Xian's arm. The blue veins on Ta's forehead bulged, and he looked at Xueqi with a gloomy expression. He wanted to kick Xueqi a few more times. Is this how you test? Xueqi sat cross-legged on the ground, scratching his feet. I didn't use my full strength. You dare to use your full strength. Do you have any shame? Idiot! Ta raised his fist and was about to punch him. Xueqi quickly jumped up and hid by the door, as if he would run away as soon as Ta moved. I just couldn't control it, Xueqi said in a low voice, scratching his head with the same hand he used to scratch his feet. Thinking that he had hit a kid, he was really embarrassed. Since you couldn't control your strength, you can follow other hunting teams next time, Tua said with a straight face. Don't, I can explain. Xueqi was anxious when he heard that he was going to be kicked out of the team. Leader, you asked me to test Xian, right? I did. I planned to only punch him twice, but when I saw the totem patterns on his body, I couldn't control myself and kept punching him. Totem patterns? What happened to his totem patterns? Ta looked at Xueqi with sharp eyes. Leader, didn't you say that the totem patterns of the newly awakened warriors only reached here? Xueqi gestured with his hand near his shoulder. But his totem patterns have reached here. Xueqi gestured with his hand about a palm away from his shoulder. Impossible, Ta and Tua said at the same time. But impossible? Nothing was impossible. People used to say that kids from the orphan cave couldn't awaken their totem patterns until they were 12 or 13 years old. But what happened? People didn't think that junior totem warriors could kill a healthy adult thorn black wind with only 1 or 2 people. But what happened? People also used to say that no one could walk out of the mountain after getting lost. But what happened? That kid had just awakened his totem patterns. Leader, I remember that Mao's totem patterns only reached here. Before Xueqi finished his words, Tua kicked him. Okay, you can go back now. Ta waved his hand, indicating that they should leave first. Tua and Xueqi pushed each other out of the door, but when they stepped out, they found that their leader was standing outside. Ho! Ho ho! Hello, leader! Tua and Xueqi quickly left after saluting. Chapter 66. After having dinner with Old Ku, Xiao took Caesar back to his cabin. Although he hadn't been home for more than 20 days, it was obvious that someone had cleaned the cabin. The water tank was filled with water, and it didn't look like it had been left there for a few days. Even the animal's skin on the bed had been washed and dried. There were no worms or other smells. Obviously, Old Ku had asked someone to do it for him. After lighting a fire, Xiao moved his arms a little. Only 3 hours had passed, but Xiao could already feel that most of his broken bones had healed. It was indeed a good medicine. As for the totem tattoos on his body, Xiao certainly knew that he was faster than the others. Among this group of awakened warriors, the totem tattoos on Mao's arm only extended to half a finger. During hunting, although Xiao was also wearing a sleeveless animal skin coat, at that time, everyone only paid attention to the prey. In the dangerous forest, one careless mistake could lead to death. Therefore, everyone was very cautious. No one would be distracted by the totem tattoos on other people's bodies. In addition, Xiao was very good at controlling the totem power, so the totem tattoos appeared and disappeared very quickly. After a prey was killed and everyone was free, the totem tattoos on Xiao's body had already disappeared. Therefore, during the hunting, no one noticed the amazing speed of the totem tattoos on Xiao's arm extending. Just now, Old Ku was so scared that he even broke his walking stick. At first glance, he couldn't believe it, so he rubbed his eyes and checked it several times. He believed that if others saw it, they would also be very surprised. For example, Xueqi. After the first punch, Xueqi glanced at Xiao's arm. Xiao noticed that Xueqi's attack didn't have any real killing intent. Xiao knew that it was just a test. He was just curious about the purpose of Xueqi and Tua. Lying on the bed, the nerves that had been tense for the past few days finally relaxed completely. It was indeed very comfortable in the tribe. After a good night's sleep, Xiao woke up the next morning. He stretched his body and found that the bone injury on his arm had completely healed. It was much faster than the few days Old Ku had said. In fact, even if he didn't drink the medicine, he could still recover overnight. She cooked a pot of wild fruits and dried meat soup and shared some with Caesar. It didn't taste good, but he was already used to it. There wasn't much soup. Xiao wasn't full. He looked at Caesar and saw that it was the same. Patting Caesar's head, Xiao said, "When the prey is sent back, I'll give you something good to eat." Caesar smacked his lips, yawned slowly and stretched. Seeing this stupid look, Xiao Xian thought of the hunting wolf pack he saw when he went to the second stronghold. Compared to the wolves in the forest, Caesar really didn't have the wolf nature. If it continued like this, he might really turn into a dog. He just didn't know whether that would be a blessing or a curse. After taking a shower, Xiao Xian dragged Caesar out and took out a fish toothbrush to brush him. He hadn't bathed for more than 20 days. This guy rolled on the ground every day. He might have been teased by Gu, because there were many lumps on his fur. Old Ku would help Xiao Xian clean the house, but he wouldn't give Caesar a bath. In Old Ku's eyes, Caesar was still just a spare prey. Why would a prey need a bath? When Tuo and Kiki brought the prey to Xiao Xian, they saw Xiao Xian brushing Caesar's fur outside the house. Originally, the shaman had arranged for someone else to help Xiao Xian carry the prey down the mountain. They asked the shaman for this job later. "Hey, your arm is fine?" Seeing Xiao Xian brushing Caesar's fur nimbly without any injury, Kiki threw away the things he was carrying and wanted to go over to check Xiao Xian's arm, but was stopped by Tuo. Kiki was still struggling. Tuo mouthed, "Team leader," and Kiki immediately quieted down. After he went back yesterday, he was dragged out by the team leader and beaten up again. Today, his face was still swollen. After Tuo and Kiki moved the prey into the house, Xiao Xian thanked them with a smile. He wanted to give them some meat to express his gratitude, but was rejected by Tuo. Tuo found that although Xiao Xian's attitude was not bad, he was not very enthusiastic either. There was no other way. After all, Kiki had broken his arm yesterday. Tuo smiled embarrassedly and said, "By the way, the shaman said that we should wash up and go to the top of the mountain the day after tomorrow to worship our ancestors. We will go there in the morning." They didn't stay here for long. Fearing that Kiki would do something stupid again, Tuo pulled Kiki away and left. After brushing Caesar's fur, Xiao Xian went into the house to check on the food that had been delivered. The prey that was placed on the mountain yesterday had been processed by someone. Even the skin of the thorn-black wind had been skillfully peeled off. There were 2 layers of skin. One layer was hard scales, and the other was thick and tough skin. The 2 layers of skin had been separated, and someone had specially processed it. There was no smell of blood, and it was very clean. Caesar stood 2 meters away from the thorn-black wind and bared his teeth. Obviously, he was very afraid of this creature, but he was also curious and greedy. He growled while licking his lips. Xiao Xian took out the smallest piece of meat and planned to give it to Caesar. After thinking for a while, he took out a tool and cut it again, then threw the small piece to Caesar. The meat of high-level prey contained too much energy. Xiao Xian didn't know how much energy Caesar could bear. Looking at the pile of food in front of him, Xiao Xian calculated how much salt he could exchange with the tribe. In order to attend the ceremony to worship their ancestors, everyone in the tribe was busy. They took out their favorite things, and the scale of the ceremony was no less than that of the snow festival. Even the other hunting group that was supposed to leave had to postpone their departure for a few days. They would leave after the ceremony. Xiao Xian asked someone to make a shirt with the scales of the thorn-black wind, and he wore it like an armor. Although it looked silly, it was necessary to show off. This was one of the most direct ways to prove one's ability in the tribe. Xiao Xian also did as the Romans did. Of course, Xiao Xian didn't forget to send some scales and meat to Mao. After all, Mao also contributed to the hunt of the thorn-black wind. After 50 days, the tribe held another grand ceremony for the whole tribe. This time, it was not as troublesome as the snow festival, and no one danced. Xiao Xian was arranged to sit near the fire pit. As the biggest hero who found the ancestors, he had the right to do so, and no one in the tribe objected. Therefore the people in the tribe noticed that among the group of people near the fire pit, only Xiao Xian, who was obviously thin and weak, was standing there. This time, Xiao Xian didn't dare to be absent-minded. He carefully followed the people in the tribe to worship the ancestors. He thought to himself, "Ancestors, please bless me for a successful hunt in the future. Don't get into trouble again." The 4 ancestors were cremated in the fire pit. The flame of the fire seed, which was originally harmless, expanded and wrapped the 4 withered bodies. Soon, the 4 bodies gradually disappeared, without even a trace of smoke. When the flame of the fire seed returned to its original size, the fire pit also returned to its original state. There was no ashes, and no residue left. Every deceased person in the tribe would be cremated in this way, but not everyone could hold a big ceremony during the cremation. Not to mention the scale of the ceremony that belonged to the ancestors was no less than the snow festival. Xiao Xian noticed that the bone ornament was gone. Obviously, it was left behind by the shaman. Well, it was a pity to burn such a treasure. After the ceremony was over, Xiao Xian was called over by the shaman. The shaman asked Xiao Xian about what happened in the cave. He asked more details than the others. Moreover, the shaman's focus was more on Xiao Xian's induction at that time, which was the so-called totem guidance. Xiao Xian told the shaman what he had prepared, and pretended to be stupid when it was necessary. He stayed with the shaman for more than an hour, and then was released. After Xiao Xian left, the shaman took out a jade stone box and carefully opened it. There were 3 similar bone ornaments neatly placed inside. If Xiao Xian was here, he would be very surprised. It turned out that there was more than one such treasure. But the difference was that the small ball in the middle of the bone ornament was not as shiny as before. It was very dim. Beside the stone box, there was an animal skin roll. It didn't look old, but in fact, it had a history of nearly 1,000 years. Opening the animal skin roll, there were several relatively simple drawings, but it could be seen that they were the bone ornaments in the stone box. Finally, I found them all. The shaman sighed. If someone was here, they would be puzzled. There were 6 similar bone ornaments drawn on the animal skin roll, but there were only 3 in the stone box. Yet, the shaman said I found them all. Thinking of Xiao Xian's answer, the shaman's slightly sad face showed a trace of a smile. He knew that Xiao Xian was not completely honest, but it didn't matter. The power of the fire seed can tell you the most correct direction. Just like in the ancient times, the ancestors used fire to illuminate the night. He had indeed said this before, but in fact, there were very few people who could do it. Even if they could sense it, they were not as sharp as Xiao Xian, and it was far less intense. It was just a kind of vague feeling. With just a vague feeling, it was impossible to walk out of the cave. Just like the ancestors, they could sense a little bit and find the elder's location, but they couldn't walk out of the cave. Thinking back to Xiao Xian's awakening, he was different from others. He was more inclined to awakening with a complete fire seed. Was this the difference between a complete fire seed and an incomplete fire seed? The shaman looked at the bone ornament in front of him, stretched out his old bark-like hand, and carefully touched the dim ball on the bone ornament. He put the animal skin roll back, closed the stone box, and put it back in its original place. Taking 2 steps back, the shaman looked at the stone box quietly and bowed respectfully. The elder, this title had disappeared in the tribe for nearly 1,000 years, and no one knew when it would appear again. Chapter 67. The old Ku didn't tell anyone about Xiao Xian's strange improvement speed. According to his observation in the next few days, Xiao Xian found that Xueqi and the others didn't mention it to anyone either. Therefore, when people in the tribe looked at Xiao Xian, they only praised him as a brave warrior, a warrior blessed by their ancestors. Other than that, there was nothing else. Even Gu, who often went to old Ku's place, didn't know. After returning, Xiao Xian sent some food to a few families he was familiar with. Of course, he didn't leave old Ku and Gu behind. He also sent some food to Auntie Ai, who helped Xiao Xian sew things, the people who taught numbers, and the kids in the cave. Xiao Xian had almost finished learning how to polish stoneware. The shamaness and the chief had sent him some high-quality stone cores. Xiao Xian polished a few spearheads, while old Ku had finished polishing the broken tip of the teeth knife. It didn't look good, but it was still usable. Take a look. What do you think of this one? Xiao Xian handed the polished spearhead to old Ku. Old Ku slowly raised his eyelids and looked at it. He didn't touch it, but said directly it's good. It wasn't easy to get a good comment from old Ku, because many stoneware craftsmen in the tribe would be mercilessly criticized by old Ku as trash. In comparison, Xiao Xian's skills were quite good. Xiao Xian put aside the polished stoneware, and approached old Ku with a smile, saying, "You see, my stoneware crafting skills are almost there. You also said that if I want to improve, I have to practice more. Can you move on to the next stage of teaching?" Old Ku wasn't famous for his stoneware crafting skills, but for his amazing skill of setting traps. "Do you want to learn?" Old Ku asked in a low voice. "It's hard work." "Of course. I'm not afraid of hard work." Xiao Xian nodded quickly. "Okay, you can come back tomorrow morning." "Oh, okay, I'll go now." Xiao Xian still helped old Ku set up the stone pot and cut the firewood before he left. After Xiao Xian left, old Ku's expressionless face couldn't help but smile. The next morning, when Xiao Xian's place, Caesar, old Ku was already waiting. "Take it." Old Ku pointed at a small wooden box beside him, and walked out with his crutch. Xiao Xian hurried over to carry the box. It wasn't heavy, and he didn't open it to see what was inside. Caesar was yawning when he was knocked on the head by a wooden cane. He bared his teeth and looked over. When he saw old Ku, he quickly hid his teeth. Unexpectedly, old Ku walked over to Caesar's side and sat on the wolf's back. He almost squashed the unprepared Caesar. Caesar moved uneasily. Old Ku hit him twice with his cane, and he calmed down. He wasn't afraid of other people in the mountain foot area, but he was afraid of old Ku. "Go to the training ground." Old Ku pointed with his cane. "Oh." Xiao Xian carried the box and headed over. Caesar was 1 year old now. He was growing fast, and he often helped Xiao Xian and old Ku to carry things. Of course, he could carry old Ku on his back. He almost fell just now because he wasn't prepared. Therefore, when Gu was chewing a piece of jerky in the morning, he saw old Ku sitting comfortably on the wolf's back with his cane. Gu was so shocked that he almost choked. Gu became familiar with old Ku later. He was also a disabled person in the tribe, and he couldn't stay idle. Plus, he was thick-skinned, so he often went to old Ku's place. In Ji's opinion, old Ku was too strong. After losing a leg, he quit the hunting team and didn't let others help him. In the end, he even moved down the mountain and separated from his teammates. He didn't accept gifts from others, because he thought it was charity and hurt his self-esteem. Every year when he went up the mountain to participate in the ceremony, he didn't let others support him, carry him, or carry him. He just walked slowly up the mountain with his cane and one leg. It seemed that he was afraid that others would say he couldn't walk, so he walked on his own wherever he went. This stubbornness lasted for decades. But now, who was sitting on the wolf's back? Could it be that their attitude towards wolves was different from that of humans? Not walking on his own? Was he not afraid of being criticized? What happened to his so-called self-esteem? Was it eaten by Caesar? There were a few low hills full of trees near the training ground. Usually people would get wood there. There were not many plant species, and there were not many animals that could be eaten except for flying stone squirrels with strong reproductive abilities. They were probably eaten up long ago. The trees here were not as thick as the ones in the hunting forest, but they were enough for daily use. Some of the thicker ones were as thick as buckets. Why did people hunt? The answer was, in order to pursue the adaptation strategy of maximizing energy. Fruits, vegetables, grains, river fish, and animal meat were all on the tribe's menu. Fruits, vegetables, and grains could be found in the surrounding hills, but there were not many of them. The river fish was newly added last year, so people in the mountain foot area ate a lot of them. As for animal meat, it was the staple food of the tribe, and also the food with the most energy in the diet, especially high-level animal meat. Therefore, when people in the tribe hunted, they not only followed the development strategy set by their ancestors, but also to satisfy their own energy needs. The higher the level of a warrior, the more inclined they would be to eat high-energy food, and low-energy food would not be of much help to them. When hunting, in addition to assassinating and slaughtering, they would also use the method of setting traps. A good noose and trap could become a very dangerous lurking killer. Old Ku used to be a lurking killer. After getting down from Caesar's back, Old Ku did not immediately teach Xiao Xian how to set a noose. Instead, he first told Xiao Xian what to pay attention to, such as how to make use of the environment and how to hide the trap. After the lesson, Old Ku began to set a simple trap. As he worked, he explained the technical points involved in each step to Xiao Xian. Different types of traps, such as hole traps, intersection traps, flat traps, etc., all had their own characteristics, and there were many changes made according to the prey species. How big should the mouth of the trap be? How much should it cover around the prey's head? Is animal hair better or straw rope more suitable for the connecting thread used for the snares? Double-sided, single-sided, or compound? Or, should they make a series of traps? Should they dig a hole? Should they set a knife post? Although Xiao Xian had seen Lang Jie set traps, after listening to Old Ku's explanation, he knew that the two men's styles were indeed very different. Lang Ga's family also set traps. Lang Ga's grandfather's trap was also very good, but the other party's style was different from Old Ku's. Old Ku's traps, simply put, were more insidious, more ruthless, and more in pursuit of a sure kill. After demonstrating a few simple traps, Old Ku let Xiao Xian try. However, to set a noose, they had to start by weaving straw rope. They had just used up all the straw rope they had brought. How about weaving straw rope? Do you need me to teach you? Weaving straw rope and knotting are very important to a good noose, Oldka said. Xiao did not answer directly as he was weaving straw rope. Instead he asked, "Do you know the meaning of my name, Xian?" Oldka paused in the middle of knotting the rope. He really did not know. People in the tribe named things simply for the sake of simplicity, like Oldka's own name. Or they named things that they were familiar with, or things that were very memorable, like Mao. Or they named things with onomatopoeia, like Kiki. Oldka raised his eyelids and waited for Xiao's answer. Xiao swung the straw rope in his hand, shook his fingers, and then pulled it tight. A seemingly simple knot was completed. He laughed. Don't you think that the word Xian looks like a knot made from straw rope? He was not lying. In his previous life, when he was born, his grandmother was making straw rope. Later, when she was about to name him, his grandmother found an oracle bone inscriptions ornament at home and immediately took a fancy to the word Xian. His grandmother said, "No matter how I look at it, it looks like the straw rope we make. Let's call it that." In the language of the tribe, the word Xian was very similar to the oracle bone inscriptions, so Xiao's explanation was not suspicious. Oldka looked at the rope loop that Xiao had finished weaving, and then looked at the knot in Xiao's hands. He had demonstrated it just now, and he had only demonstrated it once. There were a few knots that he had designed himself when he was hunting. They looked simple, but when tied, they were very complicated. If there was a slight deviation, the knot would be useless, and the effect of the trap would be very poor. The cunning prey in the forest would be able to escape as long as they found a loophole. As a person who pursued the path of killing, Oldku had very strict requirements for knots. But he had planned to teach him slowly. After all, many people could not make a complete knot even after learning for half a day. He did not expect this kid to be able to do it with just one look. The corner of Oldku's mouth twitched. He thought to himself, is this kid born to learn this trick? This was really too fucking exciting. I'll continue to update tomorrow. Please forgive me. Chapter 68. On a low mountain next to the tribe's training ground, the trees were not thick, but they were dense. The branches were full of green leaves, and the surrounding shrubs and grasses grew fiercely. In this season, they changed almost every day. On both sides of a stone path with sparse weeds that people usually walked on, some annual plants were already waist-high. In places further away, people would not be able to see them if they walked in. Xiao held a stone knife that was half an arm's length in his hand and walked on this seemingly ordinary stone path. It had just rained yesterday, so the grass and leaves were all washed clean. The surroundings were filled with the faint fragrance of unknown flowers. In the distance, there were bursts of roaring sounds coming from the few stone mountains. In comparison, the few short mountains here were much quieter, and there seemed to be no danger. Xiao held the stone knife tightly and looked serious. He did not dare to be careless at all. Oldka taught Xiao how to set traps and set traps, but he only taught him for 2 days before changing the method. According to Old Ku, if you want to catch a bear, you have to think like a bear. If you want to hunt a beast, you have to put yourself in the beast's shoes. If you want to set a better trap and pursue a set of ultimate killing moves, you have to personally experience the mysteries contained in it. In the face of an area full of traps, if you can't see through them and guard against them, in a real hunting ground, you will definitely die. Although Xiao felt that this method was just asking for trouble, he still did what Old Ku asked him to do. Again and again, he tried to sense the killing moves that were hidden in the branches, in the cracks of rocks, and in the gaps between leaves, where it was hard for people to notice. To put it simply, here, Xiao himself was the prey. Lifting his foot and walking on this stone path, his 5 fingers tightly holding the stone knife, Xiao glanced ahead. His eyes focused, and he sped up. Bas! It sounded like a thin beast's tendon vibrating. Coming from the right side of the path, there were at least 4 positions. Xiao didn't stop at all. He continued to run and leaped high into the air. He swung his arm that was holding the saber and the saber's shadow flashed. Suddenly, there was a crisp sound of collision between the stone arrowheads and the stone saber. 2 arrows were blocked by the stone saber while the other 2 were dodged by Xiao. At the same time, Xiao twisted his body slightly. His head, arms and legs were either extended or folded in a very comical manner. It was impossible to tell what Xueqi was going to do based on his posture, but almost at the same time, a few thorns from the other side of the path brushed past Xueqi's body. They were fired at the same time as the stone arrowheads, but the sound was softer. Due to the buzzing sound at the beginning, most people would reflexively defend that side of the path, ignoring the more stealthy assassination from the other side. If Xueqi didn't use his current posture and made a slight change, it was inevitable that he would be hit somewhere. Tap, tap, tap. The hard thorns shot into the tree trunk on the opposite side. In an instant, more than half of the thorns were buried in. After dodging the first round of attacks, Xueqi didn't directly land on the ground. Instead, he grabbed a small branch that extended out from the tree. As if his body weight didn't exist, he nimbly flipped forward and jumped over a thicker branch that extended to the top of the path. He didn't touch a single leaf on the branch at all. After landing, he immediately accelerated. Almost the moment he moved his foot, a finger-thick stone arrowhead was nailed to the place where his foot originally landed. Several times, the stone arrowhead brushed past Xueqi's foot and was nailed to the ground. However, Xueqi didn't seem to notice and continued to run. Xueqi ran and jumped. His route wasn't in a straight line, and there was no pattern to it. When he jumped again, he stepped on a nearby tree trunk and jumped again. 2 consecutive jumps allowed him to dodge the arrowheads that flew back and forth in the air. With a flick of his wrist, 5 stones appeared between his fingers. He shot them towards several bushes in front of him. In the next moment, the places where the stones hit produced the cracking sound of wood breaking. While falling, Xueqi reached out and grabbed the tip of a tree branch. He pulled his body to the side at a certain angle. Before landing, he twisted his waist and rolled on the ground to reduce some of the impact. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the arm-thick stone arrowhead that was already in front of him. A gray-white blade flashed past. Yang Guang didn't have a shiny stone blade under his hand. Instead, like a gray-white lightning bolt that suddenly appeared in the forest, he fiercely chopped down on the stone arrowhead. There was no metallic luster, but anyone who saw the blade could feel the cold sharpness of the blade. It had only been a few breaths of time since he had first stepped onto this path. Xueqi stood up and looked back at the path. The path that used to only have some sparse weeds was now covered with stone arrowheads, wooden thorns, stone arrowheads, shaking stakes, and chopped stones. Looking up at a place not far away, Xueqi asked, "How is it?" "No." Old Ka sat on a stone and said expressionlessly. Xueqi scratched his head, "I think so too." Without Old Ka's reminder, Xueqi turned around and went back to get rid of all the traps along the way. Whether they had been set or not, he removed all of them. Otherwise, the people of the tribe would be in trouble. There were several pits on the ground, but they couldn't be seen. Every day, Xueqi had to undergo this kind of training. Old Ka set up the traps, and then Xueqi would break through them. This kind of masochistic training method might cause nervous breakdown for those with weak self-control. They would be too nervous and become neurotic, looking as if there were traps everywhere. In fact, Xueqi had the same feeling for the first 2 days. At that time, even if he returned to the tribe, he would be nervous and have an allergic reaction at the slightest sound. But later he got better. Old Ka looked down at Xueqi, who was removing the traps and lassos, with a gratified expression. At first, he was worried that this kind of training method would have the opposite effect. He planned to train for 5 days before going to talk to Xueqi. But he didn't expect that before he even did anything, Xueqi had already adjusted. In the beginning, he was covered in injuries. Then, he barely avoided all the lassos and traps. Then, he was able to occasionally cut off the links between some of the lassos. This series of changes only took him 15 days. This was far beyond Old Ka's expectations. But he was afraid that Xueqi would be too complacent and arrogant, so he kept a straight face and fiercely criticized him whenever he found a mistake. After removing everything on the path, removing all the lassos that hadn't been triggered, and burying all the pits, Xueqi walked to Old Ka's side and sat down to rest, listening to Old Ka's comments. In Old Ka's opinion, the worst way to deal with those traps was to resist them one by one. If you could avoid them, why not? Why waste so much energy to resist them? Of course, according to Old Ka's opinion, when faced with a trap, experts would find the best entry point at the first moment and use the least amount of energy to break the series of traps. For a series of traps, finding the right entry point could directly cut off the links between the traps. Top experts, on the other hand, could use other people's traps as their own. The so-called subduing an enemy without fighting was similar to this. However, Xueqi was still far from being able to do that. He couldn't see through the traps set on the path at a glance like old Ku had said, and he couldn't cut off the links between the traps every time. Every day, after hearing old Ku's criticisms, Xueqi felt that his learning progress was too slow. If old Ku knew what Xueqi was thinking, he would definitely spit on the ground. Other people might not be able to do what he did in 150 days, and he said that it was slow. Part of old Ku's skills were also learned from the older generation. They focused on the art of setting traps. Some people were more conservative, while others were more sinister. However, they all had one thing in common. They would find the right person to teach them what they had learned in their lifetime, so that this skill could be passed down. Old Ku looked up at the sky, his face filled with nostalgia. Back then, I walked the same path as you, but I did better than you. You were really amazing back then. Xueqi didn't deliberately avoid the matter of old Ku's leg. That would really hurt old Ku's old self-esteem. Moreover, old Ku had already let go of it and walked out of his injuries. Why should others sympathize with him? Old Ku didn't need it either. How long did it take you to become a top expert? Xueqi asked curiously. No, I wasn't able to reach it even when I was at my peak. Chapter 69. Everyone in the Mountain Foot district knew that old Ku no longer took stoneware jobs. No one knew what he was doing all day. Early in the morning, he would go out on a wolf with a walking stick, and only come back at night. And old Ku didn't need to trade for food himself. Xueqi had enough food. In Xueqi's words, it was called tuition. Old Ku didn't refuse after thinking for a while. One set up, the other set up. Although old Ku was tired, he was in a good mood. Finally, after leaving the hunting team, he could use what he had learned. Although it was not as good as before, it was enough for Xueqi. Every day, seeing Xueqi being tortured by those traps, old Ku laughed happily. He was also trained like this in the past. However, he wasn't as talented as Xueqi. He was tortured for so long that he didn't want to think too much about it. Therefore, old Ku was trying his best to make Xueqi feel the mystery of it. Old Ku knew that Xueqi was too talented. Maybe after a while, the traps he could set now wouldn't be enough to trap Xueqi. If he was still at his peak, if his leg was not broken, he could at least trap Xueqi for a while longer. Alas! Old Ku was a little sad, but not as gloomy as he used to be. Why are you sighing? Xueqi climbed up from the foot of the mountain with a face full of mud. He sat next to old Ku. In the past 2 days, old Ku had taken out a few more difficult ones. Just now, when he was trying to dodge the short arrow that was shot out from the bushes, his face was covered with mud. That lump of mud seemed to know that he would arrive at that position at that exact moment. It appeared just in time, and Xueqi had no time to make a move, so he had to take the hit. What if it wasn't mud at that time, but something else? Xueqi felt that he still had much to learn. As the party being hunted, if one could see through thousands of traps with a single glance, and as the party being hunted, one could be considered a true expert when one's traps could be set to kill. Although many people in the tribe would think that it was useless to learn these skills, they wouldn't have the time to set up traps in the hunting grounds. Didn't he still have to go personally? However, Xueqi felt that learning this might be of great use in the future. After mercilessly criticizing Xueqi's performance just now, old Ku turned his head to look at Xueqi's reaction. He saw that Xueqi was staring at the area below where the traps had been set, deep in thought. Xueqi didn't have the slightest bit of dissatisfaction or resentment because of the criticism just now, so he felt a little relieved. Although old Ku had been merciless with his words, he was still worried that Xueqi would have a problem with him. It was rare to find such a suitable target to teach. If Xueqi refused to learn, old Ku would be so angry that he would vomit blood. Old Ku told Xueqi that his performance was better than Xueqi's in the past, but that was based on the fact that he had been learning for more than 100 days. However, Xueqi hadn't been learning for more than 20 days. Less than 20 days. Xueqi was analyzing the various shortcomings of the previous tests based on old Ku's guidance, while old Ku looked up at another place on the mountain. There was no one there just now, but now there was someone standing there silently. Ta, the team leader of Xueqi's hunting group, the son of the current chief, and one of the few senior totem warriors in the tribe. He was also a candidate for the next chief. Old Ku recognized him at first glance. Old Ku didn't have much contact with Ta. When he was at his peak, Ta was just a junior totem warrior like Mao. When Old Ku was injured and left the hunting group, Ta was still in the hunting group. However, according to the information that Old Ku had heard from some of his old friends, Ta actually didn't pay much attention to traps, especially after he joined the advance group of the hunting team. Among those who were selected by Ta to join the advance group, very few of them were good at setting traps. At most, they were just good at setting traps. That was because they had different views. People with different principles couldn't make plans together. Therefore, Old Ku didn't have a good impression of Ta. And Ta didn't look at Old Ku in a friendly way, either. Ta had intended to pull Xueqi into the advance group. Of course, he just wanted to give it a try. He thought that since Xueqi was protected by the ancestors, he must have been blessed by the ancestors. If he brought Xueqi with him, would his hunting results be better every time? Since last year, Ta's hunting results weren't so good. Although in the eyes of the people in the tribe, Ta still brought back big ferocious beasts every time he returned. In fact, many of their tasks were not completed. In terms of merits, they were not as good as the other hunting group. The team leaders of the two hunting groups were both candidates for the next chief. They had been competing with each other for a long time. Seeing that the other team's merits were better than his, Ta had been anxious for a long time. This time, because of the ancestors, he turned his attention to Xueqi, who was about the same age as his son. Ta had heard some details about the last hunting trip from Mao. The more he knew, the more satisfied he was with Xueqi. At first, he only thought that Xueqi was not much better than his son. He thought that Xueqi just had better night vision and good luck. But later, after Xueqi went to test him, he knew that Xueqi improved very fast. Maybe that was the reason why the shaman valued him? Ta didn't tell the others about Xueqi's improvement speed. He also asked Xueqi and Tua to keep it a secret. Although there was no explicit rule in the tribe that said that newly awakened warriors couldn't join the advance group, generally, those who were selected to join the advance group were experienced warriors who had at least a few years of hunting experience and had the ability to protect themselves. Actually, no one would recruit a newly awakened warrior. The next hunting trip was coming. Ta planned to talk with the shaman in a couple of days. Even if there was no explicit rule, he still had to ask for the permission of the shaman. As for the chief, he was his father. Of course, he would be on Ta's side. When the time came, the chief would not stop him. Originally, he heard that Xueqi often came to this area for training, so he wanted to have a look. But he didn't expect that Xueqi was just learning how to set traps from the old guy who had quit the hunting team. What a waste of his talent. He was so disappointed. Just when Ta and Old Ku were looking at each other with the same unfriendly look, Xueqi, who was in deep thought, suddenly said, "Yo." Ta followed the eyes of Xueqi and Old Ku, and saw the wolf marked by the shaman running up the mountain. It was running so happily that it didn't look like a wolf at all. It was so different from the wolves in the deep forest. Ta didn't like Caesar at all. In his opinion, such a wolf should be eaten as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be a waste of food to keep it. The more he thought about it, the more dissatisfied he was. Ta felt that there were too many things that he didn't agree with Xueqi. If it weren't for the protection of the ancestors, even if Xueqi could become an excellent middle-level warrior in the future, he might not have allowed him to join the advance group that he was in charge of himself. On the other side, Xueqi didn't care about other people's opinions. He was happy with the result of Caesar's training. Caesar ran to Xueqi happily and put a palm-sized animal skin bag in his mouth in front of Xueqi. Then he squatted beside him and asked for praise. "Well done." Xueqi praised him generously. Then he gave Caesar a piece of animal meat that he had prepared beforehand. It was his reward for completing the task. "Xian, what are you doing?" Old Ku was confused. Xueqi poured out a few fruits from the animal skin bag and put the bag away. He smiled and said, "There's a saying that a good dog is the hunter's eyes and ears. I'm trying to make Caesar a good dog. Maybe he can help me in hunting in the future." Ta, who was about to leave with disappointment, stopped when he heard this. He continued to listen. A good dog. Old Ku was still confused. No matter how cunning a fox is, it can't escape the nose of a hunting dog, Xueqi said. A hunting dog? Old Ku asked. Ta also pricked up his ears to listen. He was very interested in using the wolf's sense of smell. A hunting dog is a domesticated wolf. Xueqi trained Caesar to use his sense of smell to find things. At first, it was clothes and bones. Later it was fruits. Now, Xian wanted Caesar to try to find things with a lighter smell. A wolf's nose is good. Xian smiled. The shaman taught you? That's a good idea, Oldka said casually. Xian just said, to Oldka's words and didn't explain further. In fact, he really wanted the painting in the cave to reappear in the tribe. However, since someone had deliberately covered it, Xian would not easily reveal it. When he left the cave, Xian took advantage of the fact that the group of boys were out fishing to paint a layer of stone powder on the painting. The window of the stone room was also blocked with something so that no one would find out. When they rested and were about to go back, Xian looked at the place where Ta was standing. He sneered and left with Oldka's toolbox. Chapter 70. Xian's second hunting trip was about to begin. Although he really wanted to study the new traps set by Old Ku, and felt that he was so close to deciphering them, he did not have much time to spend on traps and lassos. It had been 19 days since the last hunting group left, and it would only take a few days for them to return. Now, Xian's hunting group was preparing for their return. Xian's second hunting trip was about to begin, and it was also the third hunting trip for his hunting group this year. According to the old rules, there would be more new warriors in the third hunting trip, and in order to take care of these new warriors, there would naturally be more people to watch over them. According to Xian's estimation, there would be about 50 more warriors in the hunting group this time. For example, Sai, who used to cause trouble to Xian, would also join the hunting group this time. Sai's father did not join the previous few hunts this year in order to train his son. Fortunately, there were many people fishing near the mountain foot area, and their food storage was not as good as the people in the mountains. Therefore, they could only target the fish in the water. Even if the energy contained in the fish was not as good as that of the ferocious beasts in the forest, at least they would not starve. Old Ka didn't ask Xian to go to the training ground anymore. Instead, he wanted to use the next few days to craft a few more stoneware. The stones used were all rewarded by the latter shamans and the chief, so naturally, the stoneware would not be bad. Caesar probably knew that Xian was going to leave again, so he had been following Xian closely these days. Sometimes he would even whine and cuddle with Xian like a spoiled child. Xian did not know if it was his illusion, but he felt that Caesar seemed to have grown bigger and stronger after eating ferocious beast meat for 10 days. Caesar liked the ferocious beast meat that Xian brought back, and his favorite was the thorn-black wind meat. After eating it, he did not even want to eat fish anymore, because he had become picky. There was still a lot of ferocious beast meat left in the wooden house. Xian took most of it to Old Ku's house. It was enough for Old Ku and Caesar to eat for 10 days. Xian did not have to worry about them going hungry when he went hunting. While he was talking with Old Ku about what kind of traps to use on ferocious beasts, Xian heard someone calling his name from outside. Old Ku nodded outside, and signaled Xian to go outside. He lifted the curtain and went out. He saw Tua standing outside, and Xueqi was not with him. I went to your house and didn't see anyone. You are here. Tua waved to Xian. The shaman is looking for you. Old Ku's eyelids twitched, and he stopped polishing. Since the shaman was looking for him, he could not delay. Xian greeted Old Ku and asked Caesar to go inside. He followed Tua up the mountain. He was about to go hunting. Why was the shaman looking for him now? It was still the same stone house where he had talked with Xian after paying respects to the ancestors. It was the shaman's guest house, and he usually talked there. Big Head Ta was standing outside the stone house. When he saw Xian, he showed a rare smile. Tua did not follow him in. Only the shaman was in the house, sitting on a straw mat with a faint smile. He looked amiable, but no one could tell what he was thinking. Seeing Xian come in, the shaman pointed at another straw mat in front of him, and signaled Xian to sit down and talk. Xian bowed and sat down with his legs crossed, waiting for the shaman to ask him questions. The shaman looked at Xian quietly, and was not in a hurry to ask. Xian did not say anything either. He was not in a hurry, and could wait. After a while, the smile on the shaman's face deepened. He said slowly, "Let me see your totem patterns." Xian was mentally prepared when he saw Ta at the door, so he was not surprised at all. He activated the totem power in his body, and a clear totem pattern appeared on his face. At the same time, a flame pattern appeared on his arm, which was not covered. It went over his shoulder and spread to more than the length of his palm. Looking at the totem pattern on Xiaoxian's arm, the shaman nodded. You are indeed very good. No wonder Ta wants to transfer you to his hunting group. Advance group? Xiaoxian had guessed it before. But because he had heard Lang Jie and the others say that it was very difficult to be in the advance group, Xiaoxian thought that a new warrior like himself who had just awakened this year would not be chosen. But it turned out to be true. What was the difference between the advance group and other hunting groups? Xiaoxian did not know. Only those who were in the advance group would know about their hunting activities. Those who were not in the advance group would not know. However, according to Lang Jie and the others' gossip, the advance group had their own extra tasks. No matter what, it was undeniable that the advance group would encounter more troubles. What happened to the hunting group alone was enough to annoy Xiaoxian. He knew himself well. Although he was improving faster than others, he was still a junior totem warrior who had just awakened. Wasn't Ta afraid that he would be a burden? What were these people thinking? I don't think I have that kind of ability, Xiaoxian said. That's true. Normally, people who join the advance group are intermediate totem warriors, or are about to become intermediate totem warriors. You are still too early. But Ta thinks highly of your ability, so he came to me personally to propose to you. He wants you to join the advance group. The shaman said. Thinks highly of my ability? What ability? Xiaoxian was confused, but soon he knew the answer. What did people in the tribe envy Xiaoxian the most? The protection of the ancestors. Seeing that Xiaoxian was silent and embarrassed, the shaman continued, Don't worry. If you don't want to go, no one can force you. As for Ta, I will talk to him. When he was about to refuse, Xiaoxian suddenly thought of something. He paused and asked, Will people in the advance group get more benefits? Xiaoxian found that the tribe was actually more inclined towards the elite strategy. In addition to some benefits on the surface, the more capable the elites of the tribe were, the more preferential treatment they would receive, and the tribe would be willing to provide them with more help. Benefits? Yes, like Tuar and the others, they have better herbs. Hearing Xiaoxian's words, the shaman smiled, of course. Every warrior in the advance group must have a medicine pack like that every time they go hunting. It can further stimulate the warrior's healing ability, and make their wounds heal faster. Will they give out the medicine packs in advance? Xiaoxian asked. They will be given out the day before the departure. The medicine came from the shaman, and only the shaman knew how to make that kind of medicine. Xiaoxian sat up straight and said seriously, It's my honor to be valued by the team leader. Of course I'm happy to join the advance group. There's no reason for me to refuse. The shaman was speechless. Then why did you look embarrassed just now? It's just. Xiaoxian showed an embarrassed expression. Can I change the medicine? Change the medicine? When you get injured while hunting outside, the speed of healing is very important. Without that kind of medicine, you will be more exposed to danger. The shaman advised. I know. Can I change it? The shaman was helpless. He had never seen anyone at such a young age bargaining with him. Of course, the shaman had already experienced Xiaoxian's shamelessness. Therefore, although he was surprised by Xiaoxian's suggestion, he was not too surprised. What do you want? The shaman asked in the same gentle tone as before. Recuperation medicine. Do you have any here? Xiaoxian asked. He was asking for medicine for old Ku. From the time when old Ku set the trap, he could see that old Ku was weak. His body was deteriorating quickly, and he often stayed in the house to make stoneware. It was inevitable that he would have some occupational diseases. Healthy warriors could certainly alleviate and cure such diseases with their strong bodies, but old Ku could not. Xiaoxian often heard old Ku suppressed coughs. Old Ku spent most of his time in the house making stoneware every year. After losing a leg, his strength had decreased a lot. In addition, the food he exchanged for stoneware was mostly low-level beast meat. Old Ku was a mid-level totemic warrior, and the energy contained in low-level beast meat could not fully satisfy his body's needs. Over time, the strong mid-level totemic warrior's body deteriorated, and he seemed to be aging very quickly. Xiaoxian could now go out to hunt, so he did not have to worry about beast meat. However, after so many years of accumulated injuries, he needed medicine to recuperate. Ordinary medicine might not work. Xiaoxian wanted to get some better medicine from the shaman, but the tribe usually reserved better things for the elites. After all, they were rare and hard to find. Now that there was such an opportunity, Xiao Xian had already proposed it. Even if he refused this time, he would not be able to avoid it next time. This chief candidate was not someone who would give up easily. Tower wanted to take advantage of the ancestors' protection. Xiao Xian knew that after he joined, even if he could not help, Tower would try his best to keep him safe. Moreover, Xiao Xian also knew that if the hunting results did not meet Tower's standards, he would be kicked back to the hunting group again. He did not know when he would be able to join the advance group again. However, Old Ka's health was getting worse and worse. This was a rare opportunity. The shaman was talking to Xiao Xian in the stone house, while Tower was standing not far away from the stone house. He could not hear the conversation in the house, but he knew that if Xiao Xian refused to join, the shaman would definitely reject his proposal. After a while, Xiao Xian came out with an animal skin bag in his hand and left. Tower walked into the house. He chose to join, said the shaman. Tower was delighted. He raised his head and wanted to thank the shaman, but he met the shaman's old eyes. The shaman's eyes looked the same as before, but Tower felt a great psychological pressure. He knew that the shaman was angry, and this anger was directed at him. Tower did not dare to continue to look at the shaman. He lowered his head and bowed respectfully to the shaman. "Don't worry, I will bring him back safely." The shaman did not say anything. He just waved his hand and let Tower leave. After leaving the stone house, Tower wiped the sweat on his forehead. Chapter 71. The shaman gave Xiao Xian a bag of herbal medicine for recuperation, but did not apply the medicine for wounds. He asked Xiao Xian to ask Ta for it the day before the hunting trip. The bag was not big, and some of the herbs were hard to find. Therefore the medicine for Xiao Xian was not much. According to the shaman, it was enough for 10 days. If he could return safely, even if he was kicked back to his original hunting group, he could still look for opportunities in the future. Even if he could not join the advance group, he could still try to exchange some medicine with the shaman. However, he decided to check the effect of the medicine first. He wondered if Old Ku would feel better after taking the medicine. Xiao Xian thought. The hunting group came back on the 21st day. 3 people were seriously injured, and 1 was missing. The missing person was dead, and even his bones could not be found. It seemed that the hunting group was in big trouble this time. However, the game brought back by the hunting group still made everyone excited. Except for the families of the wounded and the dead, the families of the other warriors were all shouting excitedly. At least, they would not have to worry about food for the next 20 days. In the evening, Tua came to Xiao Xian's cabin and sent him a message. "Xian, find some time tomorrow to go to the team leader to get the things. We will leave the day after tomorrow." "Thank you, I got it." Tua did not enter the cabin. He still had to inform the people who were patrolling. Xiao Xian looked out of the window. Night Swallow had become restless and active. People in the Mountain Foot district had all returned to their own houses. But it was different from the previous days. This time, there were children in the Mountain Foot district who would participate in the first hunting trip in their lives. It was inevitable that they would be excited. They trained during the day, and when they could not sleep at night, they would roar to vent their excitement. Closing the window, Xiao Xian packed up the few stone arrowheads that he had made today. He heard that the advance group would hunt in farther places, where it was more dangerous. But he did not know what was the difference between them and the other hunting groups. Were the ferocious beasts more difficult to deal with? Or was it something else? Thinking about the game brought back by the advance group, he could not find anything special. The next day, Xiao Xian went up the mountain to look for Ta. He met many people from the advance group. Because they were not informed in advance, the advance group was very surprised when they learned that Xiao Xian was going to hunt with them this time. There were also a lot of suspicious protesters, but they were all suppressed by Tower. After taking the medicine, Xiao Xian was left behind to get to know the other warriors of the advance group. However, he didn't have much to say to them, so they still treated Xiao Xian as a child. In terms of strength, Xiao Xian was indeed the weakest, so in the face of their doubtful and contemptuous gazes, Xiao Xian only smiled and did not explain. On the day the hunting team departed, Xiao Xian sent Caesar to Old Ka's place. Facing Old Ka's worried gaze, Xiao Xian clenched his fists. "Don't worry." Hearing Xiao Xian's words, Old Ka's heart skipped a beat, and he became even more worried. Last time, this kid also said "don't worry" before hunting, and what happened? First, he encountered the thorn black wind, and then he got lost in the cave. It was said that Mai and the others were so worried that their faces turned pale. Not to mention that he was going with the advance group this time. Would he encounter more trouble? Don't worry. Don't worry my ass. Looking at Xiaoxian's back as he carried the equipment up the mountain, Old Ka sat at the door, worried. Just like last time, they had to gather and sing a song before hunting. Xiaoxian learned the hunting song seriously after he came back, and this time he did not make up the numbers. While singing the hunting song, the shaman glanced at Xiaoxian, and was satisfied that this kid was not pretending like last time. However, this time, the shaman did not look at him, but Xiaoxian attracted more people's attention. All the people present stood together in groups. Last time, Xiaoxian stood with Lang Jie, but this time, he stood with Tuo, Xueqi, and the others. The other warriors in the hunting group naturally knew who Tuo and Xueqi were, and that was why they were so shocked. That was the advance group. Did Xian go there to seek death? How could the team leader agree? Of course, more people were jealous, especially the new warriors in the hunting group this time. They were awakened at the same time as Xiaoxian. When they were still training, Xiaoxian had already joined the hunting group. When they finally joined the hunting group, they found that Xiaoxian was already standing with the advance group. They were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped. Even Mao, who was recognized as the most talented among the new awakened warriors this year, was not brought in by his own father. What did Xiaoxian do? The warriors could not figure out what the team leader was thinking, but it did not stop him from teaching the kid a lesson. For example, Sai was scolded by his father again. Hoodlum did not join the hunting group this time. Xiaoxian broke several of Hoodlum's ribs when he came back from the last hunting trip. Hoodlum recuperated at home for nearly 10 days, and was beaten by Mao again when he went out. Xiaoxian was still worried that Hoodlum's family would make trouble for old Ku, so he did not beat him too hard. But Mao had his father and grandpa to back him up, so he beat Hoodlum even harder. Hoodlum was beaten down again before he had fully recovered. Now he was still recuperating at home, so he could not join the hunting group. Everyone knew that Hoodlum was in trouble, so they did not interfere, and just let Xiaoxian and Mao beat him up. The team leader also ordered Hoodlum and his father to stay at home and reflect on their mistakes. Even a healthy warrior might not be able to go hunting with the team every time. Every time, there were rules and quotas for who could go and who could not go. Every time, the team leaders would report it to the team leaders, and then the team leaders would make the final decision. If they could not pass the team leader's final review, then they should just stay at home. What? Almost out of food? Even if there is no food, you better stay at home and starve. If you don't starve, you don't learn from your mistakes. As the team leader, Ta already knew that the results of his hunting group were not as good as those of the other hunting group. Naturally, he would not allow anyone to be a hindrance and a joke. This year's hunting group, Ta made an example of Hoodlum and his father. With Hoodlum as an example, the new warriors would be more obedient this time. As they walked down the path of glory, the crowds on both sides were very excited, especially those women who had not yet awakened, but whose husbands and children were with the hunting group. They were shouting as if their lives depended on it. Xiaoxian looked over there and thought that those women were probably competing with each other to see who had the loudest voice. They were shouting, and even started fighting. They had fully inherited the tribe's tradition of being barbaric and valiant, and solving any conflict by force. When they got close to the mountain foot area, Xiaoxian also saw old Ku, who was riding a wolf. He waved to him, and then left with the hunting group. With the experience from last time, it was not difficult for them to deal with it. After they got off the path of glory, they began to speed up. The farther they were from the tribe's residential area, the faster they ran. But no one was left behind. Obviously, the training of those new warriors since their awakening was not in vain. After they got out of the tribe's patrol area, Ta signaled everyone to stop before they entered the forest, and each group could do a little rest. Xiaoxian was still thinking about what he should do later, but after listening to Ta for a while, he realized that he had nothing to do at all. Everyone else had been assigned tasks, and when the advance group entered the forest, they had already arranged who would be in charge of which direction. Xiaoxian only had one thing to do, and that was to stay by Ta's side. Xiaoxian accepted that he was not as strong as others. When the others in the hunting group laughed at him for needing protection, Xiaoxian just glanced at them and did not refute. Tuo kicked those who were laughing. The team leader went to talk with the team leaders of other hunting groups, so he did not pay attention to them. These guys in the hunting group became bold again, and if he did not stop them, they would go even further. Don't mind them. With your ability, maybe you can surpass them in 10 years. Tuo comforted him. It's okay. Xiao Xian did not look at those who were still laughing, but turned to ask Tuo, will the advance group hunt more ferocious beasts? Tuo heard this and paused, then said meaningfully, who told you that we must hunt wild beasts and ferocious beasts? Chapter 72. If they didn't hunt beasts and ferocious beasts, what else could they hunt? Xiao Xian was full of doubts, but before Xiao Xian could ask more questions, Ta had already walked over. Since they were the advance group, they had to set off earlier than the other groups to explore the way. All right, let's go. Ta called out to the others. When they were about to set off, Ta turned around and looked at Xiao Xian. Can you keep up with us? It's not like when you were with Mai and the others. Don't force yourself if you can't. Ta meant that the advance group would be faster. If Xiao Xian couldn't keep up with them, Ta might give him a hand. No, I'll try it myself. Xiao Xian had never seen the advance group's speed. Although he believed he could do it, he couldn't be too confident. What if he couldn't keep up with them? If he overestimated himself, he would be the one to suffer. Hearing this, Ta didn't say anything more. He made a gesture to the other group leaders, and then led the advance group into the forest. In the blink of an eye, the 40 figures had disappeared in the green forest. Xiao Xian finally understood what Ta meant by not as fast as the other groups. This was the difference between a motorcycle at full power and an ordinary electric car. He barely had time to pay attention to the surroundings. Fortunately, Xiao Xian had improved quickly. Compared to when he had just awakened his power, his speed had improved a lot. Otherwise, he might not have been able to keep up with the advance group. In order to check the general situation of this area in the shortest time possible, and to check if there were any ferocious beasts or other abnormal factors that were beyond the ability of the hunting group, every member of the advance group went to the destination they had arranged beforehand. Therefore, the group of 40 people went in at the same time, and soon disappeared. Xiao Xian could only see Ta, who was leading him, and another warrior, Asua, who was about the same age as Tuo and Xueqi. Except for Xiao Xian, the others were exploring in groups of 2. They must have been familiar with the area they were going to explore. After running for a while, Ta stopped. This was their rendezvous point. Later, the warriors who had been scattered to investigate would come here. Asua, you stay here and keep an eye on him. I'll go check it out. Ta left after saying that. The reason why Xiao Xian was able to keep up with them was that Ta slowed down. He asked Asua to keep an eye on Xiao Xian in case they encountered any ferocious beasts. Ta seized the time to explore the planned area. Asua was familiar with Tuo, but he was not optimistic about Xiao Xian. Before entering the forest, he was one of the people who laughed at Xiao Xian. What could a newly awakened warrior do? According to the team leader, it seemed that it was just a lucky charm. It was completely a decoration and had to be protected at all times. Regarding this, Asua despised him and hoped that this child would not be a burden like Hoodlum. After Tower left, Asua paid attention to his surroundings. Ever since they entered the mountain, he had not even looked at Xiao Xian. The surroundings were very quiet, except for the cries of birds and beasts. Asua thought that Xiao Xian would ask him some questions out of curiosity. However, after waiting for a long time, Asua did not hear anything from the person behind him. When he first joined the team, he had been curious for a long time. He had never met anyone who could be as calm as Xiao Xian. Asua could not help but pretend to check the surroundings. He quickly glanced back, and then immediately turned back. He was stunned, and then turned back again to look at Xiao Xian. Although Ta had not used his full strength since they entered the forest, his speed was still much faster than the other hunting groups. As a junior warrior who had just awakened his power this year, it was not easy for him to keep up with the others without any help. When Asua joined the advance group for the first time, he did not ask for any help either. However, he still gasped for breath for a long time after following them all the way here. It was only when the others gathered together that he finally felt better. However, now Xiao Xian was just a little short of breath. He was not even sweating. He stood there and looked around vigilantly, as if following them was nothing. Was he really a newly awakened junior warrior? Or did he come out of the mountain cave? Aren't you tired? Asua was very surprised. Seeing Asua's strange look, Xiao Xian answered, I'm okay. Xiao Xian was indeed gasping for breath, but he recovered quickly. The sweat on his body was also dried by the wind. Feeling the energy in his body quickly replenishing, Xueqi could even use his ability to pay attention to the surroundings. After looking at him carefully for a while, Asua found that this kid was not pretending. How strange. Seeing that Xueqi had no intention to ask, Asua felt bored. He used to follow Ta to explore, so why would he stay here? This place was relatively safe, so it was okay to talk. Aren't you curious about what we are going to do? Asua asked. You won't tell me even if I ask. Xueqi had asked before, but Ta, Tua, Xueqi, and the others did not answer directly. They only told him, "You'll know when the time comes." That's because we are not separated from the other teams. When the time comes, of course we won't tell you. What if we tell you and you tell others? The shaman doesn't want too many people to know. But now, I can tell you if you want to know. Asua said proudly. He saw that Xueqi seemed to have some ability, so his attitude was a little better. Once his attitude was good, his old habits would resurface. What he liked most was to answer all kinds of questions about the advance group to the newcomers. It gave him a sense of pride, especially when he saw the shocked expression on the newcomers' faces, which made him feel refreshed. Our team has a task, and it's given by the shaman, Asua said. To them, this was an extremely high honor. Moreover, in the process they were also the beneficiaries. We can eat things that the others in the tribe can't. Moreover, we can become stronger than others in the future. After listening to Asua's bragging for a while, Xueqi could not help but interrupt. So what is the task? Asua, who was immersed in his own pride, was a little unhappy to be interrupted. He snorted. Do you think the herbs used in the tribe can be found easily? Herbs. After receiving the bag of herbs from the shaman, Xueqi also found that although he did not know what the original herbs were, he could distinguish the smell of some of them. However, there were many kinds of herbs that he had never encountered before, even when he was hunting with the advance group. So you've been hunting for plants? Not all of them, Asua said. Were they really plants? Xueqi was shocked. How could they use the words hunting and killing to find herbs? What kind of plants were they? While they were talking, Xueqi heard a whistling sound coming from afar. Then, whistling sounds came from other directions one after another. Some were closer, some were farther, and some were more vague. If you didn't pay attention, you wouldn't be able to hear it at all. After the whistling stopped, people began to gather here. Ta was the last one to arrive. He had to go back to deliver the message to the advance group. If he was too far away, the others would not be able to hear it. After a short rest, Ta led the others to continue their journey. Before, they were the advance group, but after this, they became the tribe's herb hunting team, to complete the task assigned by the shaman. Chapter 73. The hunting group sped up again, and they didn't take the route that Xueqi knew. They traveled at a speed that was 2 to 3 times faster than the other hunting groups. It was a long journey, and they only took a short break to eat, and then continued their journey. In the evening, they spent the night in a cave, which was also the resting place of Ta and the others when they were hunting. On the first day, Xueqi didn't get used to the new environment. Even though he had better endurance and speed than his peers, he was only a junior totem warrior who had just awakened this year. In the original advance group, the weakest one was only one step away from becoming a middle-level warrior. Xueqi was not good enough compared with them. Therefore, when they finally arrived at the cave on the first night, Xueqi was exhausted. He lay there, unable to lift his legs. His muscles were twitching, and his mind was a little muddled. The other members were tired, too, but they were used to it. They weren't as tired as Xueqi. Seeing Xueqi like this, they all thought that this kid finally realized the gap between them. Not everyone could join the advance group. Even if the weaker ones tried their best to get in, they still couldn't keep up. However, Xueqi was already very good to be able to keep up on the first day. Therefore, some people in the advance group had a better impression of Xueqi. In their eyes, Xueqi was just a kid, and the tribe was always more tolerant to kids. Ta and the others, who were more powerful in the advance group, discussed that they would take turns to carry Xueqi tomorrow. After all, Xueqi wouldn't be able to keep running tomorrow. But the next day when the others got up, they found that Xueqi, who was still half dead last night and couldn't even move his toes, was now alive and kicking, as if nothing had happened to him. Xiao Xian didn't need Tar and the others to carry him, and he kept up with them in high spirits. Almost everyone in the advance group showed the same expression. Damn, didn't that kid come out of the cave? What did he eat to grow up? Wild animals? Ferocious beasts? Or was it a beast king? That was impossible. The food distributed in the underground cave was all low-energy meat and plant tubers. How could it grow like this? Thinking about it, he couldn't figure it out. No matter how he thought about it, he still couldn't figure it out. Could it be that he was really protected by the ancestors? Therefore, the next day, the advance group kept glancing at Xiao Xian while they were on their way. Then, they glanced at him again after a while. TSK, looking at that brat's spirited appearance, he really wasn't pretending. Unlike other hunting groups, who would hunt in one foothold and then move on to the next foothold, Ta's hunting group was on a continuous journey. After spending the night in the first cave, they would continue the journey the next day. Sometimes they had to climb over the mountains, over the dangerous peaks covered with white snow. Sometimes they had to take a detour, passing through dangerous areas such as swamps and asphalt pits. Xiao Xian saw a lot of unknown ferocious beasts. Some were huge and ferocious, and some were colorful giant snakes. Any one of them would attract the attention of the people in the tribe. However, the group didn't stop. Even if they killed ferocious beasts, they didn't bring them back. As long as they had enough food, they would just leave the rest behind. They didn't want to burden themselves. Hurrying on, hunting, hurrying on, and hunting again. They did the same thing every day. The huge consumption of physical strength also meant that they needed more energy, and the meat of high-level ferocious beasts was the best supplement. The people in the advance group were worried that Xiao Xian wouldn't be able to absorb the energy and would feel sleepy after eating the meat of high-level ferocious beasts. But it turned out that they thought too much. After hunting a thorn-black wind, Xiao Xian had already gotten used to eating meat of that level. He had already adapted to the energy in the meat. Even if the level of the ferocious beast was higher, Xiao Xian would still be able to absorb the energy. As a junior warrior who had just awakened this year, he ate as much as the others, and recovered faster than anyone else. Seeing Xiao Xian's performance, the people in the advance group were stunned at first, then slightly surprised, and then numb. In the end, no one dared to laugh at Xiao Xian anymore. Sure enough, those who could be recruited by the team leader in advance were not ordinary people. After walking like this for 5 days, Xiao Xian followed the hunting group up a mountain, and rested in a cave there. They had already arrived at their destination. However, Xiao Xian couldn't tell what was different, except for a strange feeling. After a night's rest, Xiao Xian was woken up in the morning. He took his equipment, and followed Ta and the others out. They continued to climb up the mountain, and stood on top of a cliff. Yangguang gradually came out. Facing the morning sun, Xiao Xian stood beside the cliff. As far as the eye could see, it was endless green. There were also some other colors, but 99% of them were dark or light green. This was the destination of their trip, a kingdom of plants. And the sun rose from the border between this endless kingdom of plants and the sky. The cold air warmed up again. Xiao Xian could clearly feel that everything on this land was waking up. Crack, crack, crack. In the green kingdom of plants, the pillar-shaped plants that stood like tall buildings made cracking sounds, like the pressing of heavy planks. Occasionally, some creaking sounds could be heard, like the sound of a giant wooden boat swaying in the waves. Along with these sounds, the top of the pillar-shaped plants unscrewed their tightly coiled leaves, and spread them out layer by layer like buds. Those bean-sprout-shaped giant plants, which had been lowering their heads, gradually lifted up, facing the direction of the morning sun, and spread out their 2 huge wings like leaves. The sun rose higher and higher, and the light of the morning sun had already passed the peak, shining on the other side of the mountain. Like an alarm, it spread from one side of the mountain to the other, waking up the sleeping creatures. Xiao Xian took a deep breath, took a step forward, and looked at his feet. This was a cliff. If he jumped down, he would definitely die. It would be worse than being smashed to pieces. How do we go down? Xiao Xian asked. If they wanted to go down the mountain, why did they have to climb up? There was only a steep cliff here, almost perpendicular to the ground. It would be difficult to climb down directly, and they didn't know if they would be attacked by other creatures. That would be more difficult and dangerous. Of course we can't jump directly. Someone laughed. Look at the pool over there. You'll know. Tua turned and pointed somewhere on the other side. Xiao Xian looked in the direction Tua pointed. Where was the pool? There was only darkness. No, it wasn't like that. Xiao Xian looked carefully and found that there was something moving in the darkness over there. It was just that it was too far away, so it wasn't easy to see it. But soon, the darkness lost its original stillness and began to disperse. Black dots rose one by one. At first, there were only a few, but after a few breaths, a large number of black dots rose into the air. And the pool that was originally covered by these black dots was finally exposed to Xiao Xian's vision. It was a wide pool, and there seemed to be many different colored plants growing in the pool. Yellow, green, brown, and red. Combined with the shape of the pool, at first glance, it looked like a pair of compound eyes of an insect. The mountain over there was much higher than where Xiao Xian was, reaching straight into the clouds. The rising black dots didn't fly up vertically. Instead, they flew towards them like a black cloud. Everyone get ready! Ta said to everyone, Xian, follow me. The black cloud was getting closer and closer. Xiao Xian could hear the sound of wings flapping, and he could see clearly what those black dots were. Dragonflies. Xiao Xian didn't feel it because he was too far away. But now when he saw the group of dragonflies, his heart thumped wildly. Xiao Xian had seen dragonflies before, but he had never seen so many of them. It was a huge fleet of airplanes. The small ones had a wingspan of 3 meters, and most of them had a wingspan of more than 5 meters, and some were even larger. Seeing so many giant dragonflies gathered together, Xiao Xian could imagine how shocked he was. They were going to fly from one side of the mountain to the green area on the other side. When the fleet of airplanes glided over their heads, Xiao Xian could still see the web-like veins of their wings. They were like gliders. Let's go! The people of the advance group skillfully jumped off the mountain wall and landed on a giant dragonfly when they fell. Before Xiao Xian could move, Ta lifted him up and jumped on the back of a slightly larger dragonfly. It was the first time in his life that he had experienced a giant dragonfly glider. Chapter 74. These giant dragonflies seemed to have a good temper, otherwise they would not have let the advance group hitch a ride. Judging from the style of the advance group, this was not the first time they had used this method to go down the mountain, and these giant dragonflies might have some impression of them. But according to Ta, as long as they did not provoke them or attack them, they would not mind hitching a ride and were willing to give them a ride. Looking down from the backs of the dragonflies, the forest below looked very peaceful. Of course, this was just the surface. The land below was even more dangerous than the forest they had passed through on their last hunting route. The law of the jungle also applied here. In some places where trees were too dense, there would be a lot of competition for nutrients. Xiao Xian occasionally saw some withered trees. These trees were very large and looked like they had hundreds of years of history. Their roots were intertwined. However, such a tree was withered. There was no wormhole, and the trunk was not cracked. But Ta told Xiao Xian that it had been killed by the cooperation of the surrounding trees. The battle of the plants could be on the ground, or it could be under the ground. If they dug the ground, they would see that the withered trees' underground roots had all been cut off by the roots of the surrounding trees. Attention, we need to get ready to go down. Ta reminded Xiao Xian. They could not follow the group of dragonflies all the time. Their destinations were different. After riding for a while, they parted ways. The swarm of dragonflies was very large. The 40 or so people of the advance group were not all gathered together. Even if the dragonflies were next to each other in the beginning, as the swarm of dragonflies flew and changed their formation, they soon disappeared. Jump! Xiao Xian did not use any strength at all. He was carried by Ta and jumped down. Ta chose to land on a plant that stood there like a tall building. He fell on a huge leaf near the top. The leaf cushioned some of the force, and Ta jumped down when the group of dragonflies flew a little lower, so he did not get hurt. After landing safely, Xiao Xian was put down. The leaf under their feet was a little cold and not smooth. In other places in the air, the team members found suitable landing points one after another and jumped down. Let's go! Ta asked Xiao Xian to follow them. This time, he didn't carry Xiao Xian, but he had promised the shaman that he would bring Xiao Xian back safely, so he had to keep an eye on him. Be alert and react quickly, Tower said. Yes. Xiao Xian followed Tower and jumped from the top leaf to the bottom leaf. He had to be careful not to roll down the leaf. Only the top 1/3 of the plant had leaves. Further down, there was only the thick stem. Ta deliberately slowed down, and Xiao followed him to slide down along the stem. The trees near the ground were not as bright as above. The plants were too dense, and the branches blocked too much of Yangguang. Only a small part of the light could be seen through the gaps. It was obviously cooler down there, but the light was enough for Xiao to see his surroundings. Here, Xiao had a feeling that he had become smaller, or the world had become bigger. The last time he went out hunting, he had seen many ancient trees and large ferocious beasts, but he didn't feel as small as he did now. Even the mushroom was as big as a wooden house. How could he not feel small? Close to the roots of the tall plant near the ground, Ta blew a whistle to summon the others who had landed. The whistle was deeper, not as loud as the whistles of other hunting groups. It was specially used in this place. A slight sound came from not far away. It was hard to hear it if one didn't listen carefully. Xiao tilted his head to look and saw a few thin vines that looked like straw ropes extending quickly towards them. Xiao and Tower both stood in the direction of the vines, but Xiao felt that the vines seemed to be targeting him. Whoosh! A small stone knife was nailed to the ground, and cut off the tip of the vines that were extending towards them. The vines that were cut off immediately stopped extending, and quickly shrank back, as if they were scared. Tower went over and took back the stone knife, and said to Xiao, "Don't treat them as dead things, or you will be the one to die. Besides, many of them know how to avoid the strong. You are the weakest in our group." Sure enough, he had become a target again. The ferocious beasts in the forest would attack the cubs of other races when they had the chance. But here, even the plants knew how to find the weak ones, and couldn't handle the strong ones. Xiao had heard in his last life that plants also had 5 senses, including sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. It was just that many people didn't pay attention to it. But now, Xiao had a deep understanding of the 5 senses of these plants. Soon, the other warriors who had landed in other places also gathered here. After counting the number of people, they continued to set off. But this time, they were divided into 2 groups, and went in 2 directions to search for the tasks assigned by the shaman. In this way, there were only 20 people in Xiao group. It was impossible for the people in the advanced group to be familiar with every inch of this vast green area, but they could tell the direction. As long as they had the Yangguang, they wouldn't get lost. Their route was basically the same. In the forest, they could hear the chirping of birds, insects, and all kinds of sounds made by some plants. Sometimes, it sounded like someone was knocking on a door, and the sound echoed in the forest. Sometimes, the sound made Xiao think of the sound made by the turning of the iron head of a mast. Running in the forest with Tower and the others, Xiao saw all kinds of plants and weapons. One moment, it was quiet and peaceful, and the next moment, it became a bloody storm. Xiao once saw a plant whose smooth leaves could be turned into saws or knives in an instant. It cut up the animals or other plants around it, and then buried them in the ground around it to increase its nutrition. There were also some carnivorous plants. Some of them were similar to the caterpillars and nepenthes he had seen in his previous life, and some were more ferocious, and belonged to the aggressive type. Generally, the people in the advanced group would avoid them, because they were not to be trifled with. "Let's take a rest. Tuo and Kiki go get some water." After running for half a day, Tower said to Xiao. What the shaman was looking for was not here. They had to run for a while to find it. There was no river around, not even a stream. While Xiao was puzzled, he saw Tuo and Kiki come to a plant with thick leaves, and cut the surface of the stem with a stone knife. It took several cuts to make a crack. The wall was too thick to be cut open with only one cut, and even if the crack was cut open, it would soon close up. Clear green liquid flowed out from the slit, bringing with it a faint sweet smell. Tuo and Kiki took the water bottle and collected the liquid. The liquid would also attract other insects, so except for Tuo, Kiki, and Xiao who went to get water, the others were on guard around. They would kill any insects that came. Some of them were on guard against the sky, and some were on guard against the other directions of the forest. Only 2 people were left to get water. "Xian, throw the water bottle to me." Tuo, who was getting water, said. Tuo didn't let Xiao get close to the plant, so Xiao stood about 10 meters away. Hearing Tuo's words, Xiao threw the empty gourd to him. When it was filled with water, Tuo threw the gourd to him, and continued to ask the next team member to throw the water bottle. The green liquid attracted a lot of insects, all of which were relatively large. A random beetle was nearly 1 meter long. "Hurry up," Tower urged them. There was a swarm of insects flying towards them from afar. With only 20 people, they could not fight against those insects. When the last water bottle was taken, the insects were about 200 meters away. Enough for them to leave. Let's go. After getting the water, they had to leave immediately. What are those? Xueqi asked when they were standing on a leaf to take a rest after leaving a certain distance. We call them ripper. The plant we just took water from can recover quickly after we get the water. The cut will be healed, and the water will be reabsorbed by it. Then it will protect itself with a thick wall. Many insects can't do anything to it, or they will leave when they can't smell it. But ripper is different. Most of the plants will die if they encounter a ripper, Tua said. The insect called ripper, as its name suggested, had blade-like forelimbs for tearing and cutting. The ripper was a carnivore. It could suck the juice of plants, and also the blood of animals. It often flew in groups. The people in the advance group did not want to fight with the ripper. First of all, the ripper's swarm was too lethal. Second of all, the insects were too smelly. If they got the smell, they might not be able to get rid of it by the time they returned from hunting. Chapter 75. The liquid in the gourd was refreshing and comfortable. It seemed to dispel the tiredness from the continuous running. His mind was much clearer, and his whole body was so comfortable that even his bones were shaking. How is it? Do you feel good? Asu threw a fruit to Xueqi. This is good too. Xueqi didn't know which plants were edible and which weren't, so he didn't take any action. Just now when he left the water point, he noticed that Asu and the others took a detour. It seemed like they were going to pick some fruits. These are all good stuff. Asu said, I'm not boasting. After eating these, we'll improve faster. There's a saying in the advance group. Lowering his voice, Asua continued. Only those who have been in the advance group can become senior totem warriors. Every senior totem warrior in the tribe has been in the advance group at some point. Most of the plants here were more than 100 years old. Some of the fruits and plant juices had a certain degree of cleansing effect on the human body. Even if the warriors could not describe the specific feeling, they could feel the benefits that the things they ate brought to them. Can't we take some back to the tribe? Xueqi asked. It's not that easy. Asua said with a bitter face. I want to take some back for my brother and sister, but I can't. It wasn't that the advance group led by the previous team leaders had never tried this before, but using iced food, digging out the roots, and other methods didn't work. As long as they left this place, after a day or two, the things they brought out would rot and deteriorate. Drying them? Not everything could be done in this way. So far, there are very few plants that can be taken out. The shaman's task includes them. But some of them are not easy to find. It depends on the time. Flowers, fruits, and so on. If you miss them, you have to wait for another year. For some plants, even if you wait for a lifetime, you may not see them again. You have to find another one. Xueqi was silent. It seemed that some of the plants here only bore fruit after hundreds of years, or they had to be hundreds of years old to be effective. But most of the plants died immediately after leaving this land. They couldn't survive in other places. Therefore, people might have thought of planting plants before, but it might not be effective. Until now, the tribe could only take the initiative to come to this place that was both a dangerous and a treasure land. The glory of the advance group was to serve the tribe. The medicine used by the tribesmen when they were sick, and the medicine used by the shaman to treat the wounded were all found and brought back by the advance group. No one could deny their contribution. Other than the glory, joining the advance party would also give the warriors a chance to taste a lot of medicinal plants that could not be taken away. It would also be beneficial to the warriors' development and improvement. Therefore, some people who had joined the advance group but left due to injuries or old age would tell their children and grandchildren to work hard and strive to join the advance group. They knew that these people would become stronger in the future, and they were the elites with the most potential for development in the entire tribe. However, the internal rule in the tribe was that the advance group was decided by the team leader. Generally speaking, the shaman would not ask about it. Only special cases like Xueqi would attract the shaman's attention. Most of the time, the team leaders would choose people who were on good terms with them. As long as they were strong enough, they would be able to pull them in. These people were also the strong supporters of the team leaders when they fought for the chief's position. After the selected people joined the advance group and felt the benefits, who would want to give up their position and quit? No one wanted to. If one more person joined the advance group, the others might be kicked out. Even if the hunting group was ruled by the team leader alone, the ancestors had set the rule that the number of warriors in the advance group could not exceed 1/5 of the total number of warriors in the hunting group. Maybe the team leaders of the previous generation had learned their lesson, so they worked together with the chief and the shaman to set this rule. Thinking about this, Xueqi understood why some people in the advance group looked at him with such a subtle expression at the beginning. They were not only looking down on Xueqi's strength, but also taking precautions against him. Xueqi noticed that most of the people here lived on the mountain, and only a few lived on the mountainside. Were people like Mai and the others not qualified to join the advance group? Of course they were qualified, but without the team leader's permission, Mai was not allowed to join either. Absolute fairness did not exist. Even Xueqi was invited to join the advance group only because of the ancestors, and because Ta's team had not been doing well. If it were not for the ancestors, as a kid from the orphan cave, and since Xueqi was learning how to use traps and lassos from the old coup, Ta would have looked down on him even more. Unless Xueqi was really talented in the future, he would have been excluded from the advance group by Ta. The better, and the worse, the worse. The development on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain had probably gone beyond the ancestors' original plan. When the people at the foot of the mountain were thinking about how to get more food, some people on the mountain were thinking about how to get more benefits. When there was no threat from other tribes, infighting was inevitable. It was just that it was not obvious on the surface. After drinking a few mouthfuls of the water from the plant, Xueqi looked around. It was higher here, and he could see some weird-shaped plants in the distance. What's that? Xueqi pointed in that direction and asked Asua. Asa glanced in that direction and smiled maliciously. That's the skull tree. Every tree grows after eating a human head. Xueqi did not say anything, nor was he frightened. He just looked in that direction. No wonder it was called the skull tree. It did look like a human head, with long hair floating in the wind. As for eating human heads, Xueqi did not believe it. Seeing that Xueqi was not frightened, Asua felt bored, but he continued, "It's a pity that it hasn't bloomed yet. When the skull tree blossoms, there are so many big flowers growing on it. It's very beautiful." Xueqi was speechless. According to what Asua said, Xueqi tried to imagine, but he still could not imagine how beautiful a human head covered with all kinds of giant flowers would be. In front of us is the place where the jumping fruit tree grows. Later, you just need to stand further away. Don't get close, Asu said. Got it. Xueqi knew his place. After resting for a while, Ta signaled the team to set off towards the jumping fruit tree. As they walked forward, the trees became less dense. They could see the scene in front of them without standing on the high ground. The jumping fruit tree that Asua mentioned looked like an enlarged weeping willow. The difference was that every drooping branch was full of round fruits, each the size of a fist. Seeing that everyone was breathing softly, Xueqi also lowered his presence. It seemed that the tree was very sensitive to sound. Ta raised his finger and pointed at Xueqi, then opened his palm and gestured Xueqi to stay here and hide behind the tree trunk. Xueqi nodded, indicating that he understood. However, he felt that something bad was going to happen. He wanted to say something, but the other team members were waiting for Ta's instructions, and Ta did not pay attention to him at all. After looking around, Ta waved his hand. 20 people rushed towards the jumping fruit tree like lightning. They tiptoed on the ground and ran quickly without making any sound. They surrounded the jumping fruit tree. However, when they were close to the jumping fruit tree, Xueqi suddenly heard Ta shout, "Retreat!" The others did not hesitate. Even if some of them were about to touch the tree, they decisively retreated because of Ta's shout. As for the fruits that were originally firmly growing on the branches of the tree, because of the tower's sound, some of the fruits were startled and quickly detached from the branches, shooting out in all directions like arrows and running away. Xueqi did not know what had happened. He only saw Ta and his team retreating in a hurry. The next moment, Xueqi was lifted up. They were running in a hurry, as if they were hiding from something. When Xueqi was lifted up, he looked back and saw something floating in the air. The wind was getting stronger and stronger, bringing those things closer to Xueqi and his team. Xueqi was carried up to a tall plant. 5 soldiers in a group pulled the thick leaves on both sides together, forming a narrow enclosed space. When they pulled the leaves, Xueqi could still hear the sound of the thick wood being broken. At the last moment when the leaves were pulled together, Xueqi caught a glimpse of those things being blown by the wind. They were like dandelions, with soft and fluffy white hair. However, those white hairs were longer, each 1 to 2 palms long. They were densely packed, flying everywhere in the sky and the forest. Puffing sounds came from afar. After all the gaps were closed, the light from outside could not penetrate the thick leaves. It was very dark inside, and the vision was not clear. There was a sense of tension in the enclosed space. Xiao Xian could hear the rapid breathing of the people next to him. They must have used up a lot of energy to run for their lives. Not only the others, but Xiao Xian also felt the danger. His eyelids twitched, and he could not help but lean back a little. While thinking, Xiao Xian suddenly heard a series of puffing sounds around him. Along with these sounds, white hairs pierced the thick leaves like thorns. One of them was only half an inch away from Xiao Xian's eyes. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.